Chapter 1033. The group of online anchors couldn't help but grit their teeth. They wouldn't get up early if there was no profit. They spared no effort to drive here, braving the cold wind and the dark night, holding a flashlight, not afraid of hardship or tiredness. Wasn't it for a meteoric rise? But now he didn't even get a single thing. He worked so hard, but all his efforts were in vain. How could they not be angry? How could they not be shocked? How could they not be angry? The people in the factory didn't care how shocked the people outside were. The mud suddenly became easy to fish, so they didn't need so much manpower, and the temporary workers in the factory lost their jobs. The drivers who only cared about hauling the mud didn't know how powerful it was. They just waited under the pool for the bricks to be thrown down from above. The ones who really knew how powerful it was were the employees standing by the pool in Guoming. However, humans were such unique creatures. As the saying goes, frogs are boiled in warm water. These employees had seen too many incredible things in the past few days, so they were particularly calm about the floating bricks, as if they were meant to be floating. Guoming walked around the factory the whole time, doing a good job of safety management according to Qin Guang's requirements. He only looked at Qin Guang in the Temple of the Earth, from time to time, thinking to himself that he really had to look at him in a different light. Guoming always knew that Qin Guang wasn't an ordinary person, but he really didn't expect him to become such an incredible person. Although Qin Guang didn't give him any explanation, Guoming could think with his toes that the floating mud in the factory was definitely Qin Guang's doing. Did he really become an immortal? Forget it, that wasn't important. What was important was that he had the ability to do what he said, and that was enough. This meant that there was absolutely no need to be afraid of working with him. Xiaguang Environmental Protection was in such a desperate situation, and Tangshan Industrial's coffin was almost covered with soil, but he could pull it back. It seemed that he wasn't joking, nor was he playing house. He really wasn't playing around. He really wanted to pull Xiaguang Environmental Protection and Tangshan Industrial back on the right track. He used his incredible ability. Looking at Qin Guang from afar, Guoming felt the blood in his heart gradually surge to the top of his head. Although I don't know what other trump cards you have, no matter what, I will fight with you to the end. Just like how we overturned Su Lijing together, this time we will make the impossible possible, and revive Xiaguang Environmental Protection and Tangshan Industrial Factory. Is this guy trying to scare us on purpose? Hua Ling, who was supposed to be asleep in the dormitory, unknowingly stood beside Guoming. Zhou stretched lazily. I really thought I was done for in the afternoon, but he saved me. Hua Ling snorted. You made me nervous for nothing. I even called Teacher Zhou specifically because of the mud discharge. How's Xiao Zhou doing overseas recently? Guoming asked curiously. Hua Ling shrugged. What else can he do? He's just a researcher in the laboratory. But Teacher Zhou is amazing and knowledgeable. Even if he's a researcher in a world-renowned laboratory, he won't be buried. He's already a small leader of a project team now. Guoming nodded, then looked in Qin Guang's direction. It's quite a pity. I thought Xiao Zhou and Qin Guang would end up together. They were so affectionate back then, I was interested. Tisk tee, Teacher Guo, you're starting to gossip? Hua Ling teased. Zhou also said strangely, actually I think so too. Hua Ling interrupted the others. Who can say for sure when it comes to relationships? Besides, when have you seen Qin Guang and Teacher Zhou break up? It's just that one of them is in China and the other is in America. They're thousands of miles apart and out of reach. At most they can only chat online. Zhou felt that there was something wrong with Hua Ling's words. After a while she reacted. Hey, you're really shameless. Out of reach. Hua Ling laughed. You don't understand, do you? If they didn't have an affair, would Qin Guang have confessed to Teacher Zhou at the press conference? Also, you don't know, but Qin Guang bought a Mercedes-Benz for Teacher Zhou. Teacher Zhou isn't a vain person. If she didn't completely treat Qin Guang as one of her own, would she have accepted his car? Zhou was shocked. Really? Teacher Zhou's Mercedes-Benz E400 was bought by Qin Guang for her? Guoming also had a face full of gossip. He pricked up his ears to listen. Hua Ling couldn't keep her mouth shut. What else? Where do you think Teacher Zhou got the money to buy such an expensive car? Also, the money Teacher Zhou used to go abroad was... Cough cough. Qin Guang's cough came from afar, but only Hua Ling heard it. It sounded like thunder in her ears, startling Hua Ling, a big sister from the northeast. She hurriedly looked in Qin Guang's direction anxiously. She knew that he was unhappy that she had said too much. She timidly hid her face. I won't say any more. I'm really tired. I'm going back to the dorm to sleep. Turning around, Hualing was still feeling indignant for Zhou Jingxi. She secretly cursed Qin Guang for being so heartless. He only knew how to flirt with other women all day long. He didn't even care about teacher Zhou, who was far away in the United States. She knew that in the past 6 months, although Qin Guang would contact Zhou Jingxi from time to time, he had never thought of going to the United States to visit her. Although teacher Zhou never complained about these things on the phone, it was hard to hide his loneliness. Hualing thought to herself, teacher Zhou has a good temper. If it were me, if my boyfriend in China treated me like this, I would have jumped up and become hostile. In fact, Qin Guang was also thinking about what Hualing said. He also knew that he might have done something wrong, but in the past 6 months he had been living like he was in a war every day. It wasn't that he didn't miss Zhou Jingxi, and it wasn't that he didn't want to see her, but it was really hard for him to get away. Just like this time, if teacher Zhou was by his side, it might have been a lot easier. Although she was only a PhD student on the surface, she was also the last disciple of Professor Xu Lirong. Especially in the past 6 months, she had published many papers in foreign SCI journals and had become a hot international expert in the field of photocatalysis. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to snatch the throne of laboratory director in the extremely competitive foreign laboratories. Teacher Zhuo's knowledge couldn't be faked. Unfortunately, they were in different corners of the world. The world was too big. It was not easy to move and travel. Forget it, he didn't want to think about things that couldn't put out a nearby fire. Qin Guang gathered his thoughts and continued to release the earth elemental ability of the earth sauce exploder, forcibly compressing the sludge. At this time, the concentration of earth elemental power around his body was maintained at 0.1 units for a long time. Qin Guang even felt that after these days of crazy tossing, even after a period of time, the earth elemental power around the world wouldn't be able to easily return to its previous concentration. This was the effect he wanted. Later, when he was happy, he would crazily absorb it again so that the world would forever lack earth and he would be the only earth emperor. Time passed little by little, and when the sky turned white again, the cheers of success finally came from the Tangshan industrial factory, which had been working hard for nearly 24 hours. The workers excitedly threw their hats straight into the sky, and an unprecedented sense of accomplishment enveloped everyone's hearts. Success, they finally succeeded. After pulling out a total of 100 trucks, the sludge that had accumulated in the Tangshan industrial factory for many years was completely cleared. With the current concentration of pollutants in the pool, even if there was no effect at all, it wouldn't easily exceed the limit without a month of accumulation. Guoming, who hadn't slept all night, immediately gathered everyone together and Qin Guang gave a speech. Qin Guang waved his hand again and everyone was given 2 months' salary and bonus. Then only a few people who had a good rest last night were left on duty, and the rest were all on leave. The outdoor anchors outside the factory had been tortured for a whole night, and now more than half of them had left. Those who were left behind saw the people in the factory cheering and jumping back home, and finally resigned themselves to their fate. Well, this time was really unlucky and they completely missed out. After standing guard for a whole night, they didn't even get a ready-made fart, let alone mud. The previous real name reporting materials were no longer fresh. Even if there was some evidence left along the Tangshan River, it wasn't enough to bring down Xiaoguang environmental protection, and it couldn't even resonate with the public. It was still the same thing, evidence. Evidence. Everything needed evidence. Someone else's factory occasionally made a mistake and some sludge came out, but that wasn't a big deal and they just had to pay a fine. They didn't do it uncontrollably and it was just a normal production accident, and it wouldn't cause irreparable consequences. Without fresh and hot video footage, there was no way to prove that they were continuously discharging sludge. Then the hot news you posted online would become rootless duckweed without any evidence. Now that they were all on leave, there was no need to look inside and there was definitely nothing left. Qin Guang and Guoming stood together at the entrance of the factory, looking meaningfully at the last 7 or 8 outdoor anchors who had packed up and left, their eyes flashing with a cold light. Sorry, you wanted to eat my meat but you only got to smell my fart. I don't have any other skills but I'm especially good at settling scores. Qin Guang gritted his teeth and said to Guoming, we didn't even get a good night's sleep, We can't just let this go. What are you going to do? Qin Guang thought about it. I'll find someone to settle scores first and take care of all these people who followed the show. Song Ningyun messed with me with public opinion, and I'll use the public opinion he wants to achieve our goal. What do you mean? We took the blame and now we've successfully cleared our names. Doesn't that prove Xia Guang's environmental protection ability? Since we have the ability to meet the standards, then we have to properly discuss the operating period of Tangshan Industrial Factory. Guiming's face lit up. Qin Guang's words made sense. Qin Guang said again, of course these are all minor details. Our top priority is to think of a way. I'll try one last time to see if I can improve the process, and if it really doesn't work we'll immediately start the reconstruction plan. Guiming nodded heavily. You'll still have to spend money on this. Qin Guang waved his hand indifferently. It doesn't matter if I spend money or not, since I'm involved in this, of course I'll do it as low as possible. Because the Tangshan Industrial Factory incident ruined my reputation, I have to climb back up from where I fell. I have to prove myself again here. Didn't others say I was corrupted? Didn't they say I didn't care about the lives of the common people now that I've become part of the privileged class? Then I'll burn my money to do something, and let them see how I care about the lives of the common people. I'll definitely make up for the mistakes that Xia Guang has made all these years. How can I let Song Ningyuan do something that can earn me money, my reputation and my merit? I just want to know those people who scolded me so hard yesterday, do their faces hurt? Not only will I make their faces hurt, I'll make their flesh hurt too. Qin Guang's thinking was simple. If a tiger doesn't show his power, people will really think he's a sick cat. Ever since he dealt with Zhou Wei and settled accounts with the media that had slandered him, Qin Guang hadn't waved his butcher knife for a long time. So many media people and marketing accounts forgot the pain after the scars healed. Or perhaps others felt that he was different from the past, that he had changed from barefooted to wearing shoes, and was no longer as violent as before, paying more attention to the public's influence in his words and actions, so he wouldn't appear to be so vengeful. Others might be tired and want to sleep, but Qin Guang could bear it. After letting Guiming go to sleep, Qin Guang sat in his own office in the office building, making phone calls one after another. At the headquarters of Tianguang Corporation, especially the public relations and publicity department headed by Lu Xiaoyang, were bored to death recently. Although the publicity department of Tianguang Corporation was responsible for the movie Women and other promotions of Qin Guang's solo piano album, this amount of work wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between the teeth of the industry elite, Comrade Xiao Lu. Although he had turned over a new leaf, Comrade Xiao Lu was once an industry elite that was highly regarded by China's #1 paparazzi, Zhou Wei. What Lu Xiaoyang was really good at was this kind of offensive or defensive game of public opinion. It was really a waste of his talent to let him do the same thing as others, doing online publicity step by step. With Qin Guang's call, it was a chance for him to show off his abilities. In less than half a day, all the major media outlets that followed the trend of slandering Qin Guang online yesterday, regardless of whether they were media outlets or official media outlets, were all served with lawyers' letters. The outdoor anchors who were the most active last night were even worse off, as the lawyers' letters were sent to their respective platforms. Although the anchors were only independent individuals, the live broadcasting companies that provided them with platforms couldn't just run away. Once the lawyers' letters arrived, these platform companies finally remembered the various misdeeds of Qin Guang in the past, and without a doubt, they immediately sacrificed themselves to save the king. If it was just sacrificing themselves to save the king, it wouldn't be a big deal. If one company failed, they could just move to another. However, Tianguang Corporation's lawyers' letters were sent to the masses. Other than Bamboo Live, who took the initiative to wave the butcher's knife, all the major platforms in the industry more or less had a hand in it last night. Everyone who saw the lawyer's letter had a share and no one could escape. The end result was that these outdoor anchors who had more or less gained some popularity, encountered a situation where they were banned from all the platforms overnight. They had suddenly become vagrants with nowhere to go. Their dreams and lives suddenly had nowhere to put them. Although there were many small and medium-sized platforms that they could choose from, they were all paradise for pornographic broadcasting, and there was no place for them to stand. The nightmare came so suddenly and violently that these anchors, who had worked hard all night without any results, were not mentally prepared. While they were still in their dreams, they suddenly received a call from the original platform's management. The termination notice came so suddenly like a thunderbolt. Even if they had thousands of regrets in their hearts and should not have braced themselves to rub off on the hot topic so easily, it seemed that it was still a little too late. At the same time, many of the media outlets that had received favors from the Tiansong Water Group changed their target and switched to publishing news articles on Qin Guang's side. In fact, the media people were such fence-sitters. Whoever had milk was their mother, and they would speak up for whoever had the bigger fist. According to Qin Guang's own style of doing things, he was afraid that he would really let these media outlets go to court. However, in the end he still listened to Lu Xiaoyang's advice. No matter how big or hard one's fist was, they still had to leave something for others to eat. As the saying goes, pen and knife is black and white is white. If you really made the relationship so stiff, others could just change to a new platform or account and change their ways to slander you. You wouldn't be able to do anything about it. The lawyer's letter looked intimidating, but in essence, it was just a greeting. As for those unlucky outdoor anchors, Qin Guang had no intention of letting them go. It was not that he bullied the weak and was afraid of the strong, but that other media people only made groundless accusations on the internet. The harm and threat to him were far less than the anchors who directly went to the Tangshan factory's water outlet. If he hadn't acted quickly and used his special ability to get rid of all the mud in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable if these anchors had broadcast the mud in front of the national audience. If he really gave these people a real hammer, the reputation that Qin Guang had worked hard to accumulate for a long time was very likely to be pulled down to the bottom. Environmental protection was not entertainment. It was a matter of life and death. It was a pain point that ordinary people absolutely could not touch. Xiaoguang Environmental Protection and Tangshan Industrial Factory were at fault, but the root cause was the incompetent boss Xia's fault. Qin Guang was just an unlucky scapegoat who accidentally got involved. He added medicine with the intention of getting away with it, but his method would not bring more harm to Tangshan City. As long as the mud could be disposed of in time, it was in line with the nature of environmental protection, turning the soluble pollutants in the water body into solid waste that was easier to dispose of. Whether it was a white cat or a black cat, it was a good cat if it could catch mice. Biochemical treatment was the treatment of pollutants. Chemical treatment combined with physical treatment was also a way to remove pollutants. If Qin Guang was willing to invest this capital, even if he only added medicine from now on, as long as the water could meet the standards, as long as he could find a unit to receive the sludge, it could not be said that Tangshan Industrial Factory's operation did not meet the standards. Therefore, what Qin Guang did this time seemed not so good on the surface, but in a sense it was reasonable and compliant. As boss Xia's scapegoat, he also had a hard life. After all, it was 170 million yuan in cash. There was no reason to give it away just like that. No one's money came from the wind, and Qin Guang's efforts to protect himself were reasonable. But in the eyes of the ordinary people who didn't understand the profession, the truth was unforgivable. The people just felt that if you added medicine you were in the wrong and couldn't be reasoned with. Therefore, even if the matter had been exposed, Qin Guang definitely couldn't admit it. Today he wanted to use Song Ningyuan's method to counter him. Didn't you say that Xiaoguang Environmental Protection was incompetent? Didn't you say that Xiaoguang Environmental Protection could only add medicine to get away with it? Then the problem is, where is the evidence that I added medicine? Where's my mud? You shot a video of more than 10 minutes and said that I added medicine randomly? Who knows if you've added a special skill? If what you said is true, then where's your new evidence? It's just a video of a real name report and embellished text speculation. It's not enough. So, since we've been the scapegoat for the past 2 days, we have to have a good talk. Qin Guang had to take a stand and show a stronger attitude to continue managing Xiaoguang Environmental Protection. At the same time, he had to take this opportunity to clear Xiaoguang Environmental Protection's name and regain the public's confidence in Xiaoguang Environmental Protection's management of Tangshan Industrial Plant. Regardless of how the negotiations would develop in the future, it was time to take a stand. However, media relations were also a field of study, and everyone had their own specialties. Qin Guang didn't have the time to ask and manage everything. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoyang was especially good at this. Qin Guang only needed to set a tone, and Lu Xiaoyang would be the one to plan the specific content of the press release. That afternoon, Lu Xiaoyang's meticulously prepared press release counterattacked, engulfing all the major media outlets. With a momentum even fiercer than Song Ningyuan's yesterday, it swept through the online world in an instant. Yesterday the public was still scolding Qin Guang, but after seeing the new reports, especially after Qin Guang arranged for the pools to be auctioned and sold on the spot, the situation suddenly reversed. No matter how the people Song Ningyuan found talked about it on the internet, it was not as good as a video compilation, and they even gave you a sign saying what time it was. What are you slandering? Isn't the operation of the pool fine? The public opinion on the internet quickly turned into the following. We were wrong. We shouldn't have questioned Brother Quan Quan. He's a good person. We were used. We were so easily incited. We've lost our minds. We're retarded. We owe Brother Quan Quan a movie ticket. If you also feel ashamed, you can pre-order a ticket for heroin. That's right, we have no other way to compensate him. He can only return him a movie ticket. When Qin Guang woke up in the evening, he didn't realize that the public opinion had become that everyone owed Brother Quan Quan a movie ticket. He was also shocked. Obviously, he cared more about the reputation of Tangshan Industrial Factory. Why did these brothers want to return his movie ticket? Forget it. Anyway, it's my benefit. Don't care about it. It's always good to have money in my pocket. Even Mr. Li, who had been guarding the 5 capitals, was dumbfounded. He never expected that Qin Guang would be able to turn things around so easily and take the initiative. There were more and more things he couldn't figure out. Yes, Qin Guang must have added drugs. Then why didn't the sludge surface when he and others reviewed it? Why did it come up as soon as he and others left? Why was it that as soon as the news came out on the internet, his mud immediately disappeared into thin air? I may have reviewed a fake sewage treatment plant. Forget it. In short, this is definitely a good thing for me. Old Li's reputation has been preserved. As for the 2 brothers Song Ningyuan and Zheng He, they were both dumbfounded. They were all dumbfounded in the office. Chapter 1034. Once again he averted the danger. No, he took advantage of the attention caused by the public opinion storm to take the opportunity to throw out a more resolute attitude. I have been counterattacked by him. Although policies have to pay attention to laws and regulations, they have to consider public opinion, especially the environmental protection industry, which is closely related to the national economy and the people's livelihood. Whether an environmental protection company can continue to survive steadily has a great relationship with the company's reputation. Yesterday's storm of public opinion did not cause any harm and trouble to Qin Guang and his Xia Guang environmental protection. Instead, it became a boost for him. The conscience of a private entrepreneur. Why did Qin Guang take the risk to set foot in the environmental protection industry? Environmental protection rules the world. Stars do environmental protection, easy money and difficult money. Qin Guang interview. Why did I apply for environmental science as an undergraduate? From a scapegoat to a reversal of the situation. What does Qin Guang want? There is no magic in environmental protection. Reaching the standard is justice. Why can Xia Guang environmental protection come back from the dead? Different professions are different mountains, but the omnipotent Superman can cross the mountains, saving Xia Guang environmental protection. Such positive press releases appeared in the media and were sent to Song Ningyuan by the Public Relations Department of Tiansong Water Group. It was like a fierce slap in his face. What made Song Ningyuan feel most flustered was the very strong will and attitude expressed between the lines by Qin Guang through these press releases. Unlike before when he accidentally became the receiver, now that the matter had become big, he had also escorted Xia Guang environmental protection to pass the review. His position was corrected and his attitude was clearer. He wanted to loudly tell everyone that he, Qin Guang, was here and he was determined to take care of this matter. Previously, there had still been people who had taken him interfering in the Xia Guang Environmental Protection Agency as a joke. Those of higher levels had thought that he was just playing around, just having a moment of playfulness and not taking it seriously, thinking that they could use other methods to make up for it to make him feel satisfied. But now Qin Guang's attitude was even clearer. I think I can manage Xia Guang environmental protection well, and I think I can prove that I can make Tangshan Industrial Factory meet the standards. Qin Guang was no longer the hot-headed Tsing University student who could be easily bullied by others. He had already proven his worth and status, and he was inextricably linked to China's top officials. Therefore his attitude was extremely important. Whether it was to the ordinary people or to the higher-ups of Wuxia, it was the same. Now his grip was getting tighter and tighter. Song Ningyuan knew that it would be more and more difficult for him to let go, and the price he would have to pay would be greater and greater. Perhaps he could really loosen the hearts of some of the higher-ups and turn them to support what he did in Tangshan City. Song Ningyuan frowned deeply. He had no choice but to put away his contempt and ridicule and face this matter with a more cautious attitude. Damn it, he seized the opportunity to turn the tables. If it goes on like this, you might really end up empty-handed. He had originally wanted to see Chen Guang make a fool of himself today, but he didn't expect to see Song Ningyuan, who was in a terrible fix. He rushed to Song Ningyuan's computer to see the situation, and then he also understood the situation and shouted in shock. Song Ningyuan waved his hand, feeling a headache coming on. Alright, Heezy, don't worry about this. Go back to your school. Song Ningyuan wasn't too happy that his cousin had seen a joke. We can't just let it go like this. Although he was still studying, he had been more or less involved in the company's business. He knew that Tangshan Industrial Factory was the key layout of Tiansong Water Group, and it was the benchmark project for Tiansong's expansion from civil urban wastewater treatment to industrial wastewater treatment. If this matter was messed up, Song Ningyuan would suffer a great loss. Even if it was a family business, he would not be able to avoid blame, and at the same time, other shareholders would question his ability. There was even the possibility that Song Ningyuan's position in the company would be shaken. From urban wastewater treatment to industrial projects was a big expansion direction, representing the total investment direction of Tiansong Water Group in the next few years or even a decade. Currently, Song Ningyuan was relying on his father Song Xianxia to hold on to the key to this new direction. However, if things were not handled well, it was possible that his power would be transferred to other professional managers to run the business. Song Ningyuan nodded. Of course I know. Of course I can't let it go. After saying that, Song Ningyuan got up and called his secretary to make arrangements. He finally planned to go to Tangshan personally. Since he had been beaten black and blue by Qin Guang and had no strength to fight back, he might as well try to fight him head-on. He had to make him retreat. Qin Guang, didn't you also express your determination? Similarly, I'll show you my determination to get Tangshan Industrial Factory. I have to make you understand that this piece of meat isn't that delicious. There are bones in it. Even if you swallow it, it will get stuck in your throat. I have to make you think clearly. Your best choice is to take my compensation and leave, then cut your losses. Are you kidding? Tangshan Industrial Factory didn't meet the standards for 8 years. Do you really think it's that simple? I know you can get the Lu Group's water company to work with, but so what? The situation of Tangshan Industrial Plant is very special, and the wastewater treatment is very difficult. If anyone can rebuild it and run it up to the standard, there is no reason for our Tiansong Water Group to stand out among several competing units. We are gods invited by the local government of Tangshan City. What does Tiansong Water Group rely on? It's the huge technical consultant team standing behind us. We have the technical ability to lead the country and even the world. Even if you invest hundreds of millions to complete the reconstruction, you don't have the diamond to do this porcelain work. You still can't meet the standards. Of course, Song Ningyuan was not relying on rootless duckweed. This was also the real reason why he was still confident in snatching food from the tiger's mouth. On the other side, the local government of Tangshan City also experienced a torturous day, but fortunately, it landed smoothly again. If it wasn't for the fact that they were still afraid and Qin Guang didn't have an appointment, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth leaders of Tangshan City would probably take the initiative to discuss the next step with Qin Guang. Do you want to rebuild it or what? Please give me a straightforward answer. Although adding medicine is good, it's not a long-term solution. We still have to rebuild it. Qin Guang wasn't in a hurry to continue expressing his position. His words had already spread and old Master Jin didn't call to make things difficult for him. This was good news. It meant that the old master's attitude toward him had changed. Later, Qin Guang thought about it and felt that the review team had inexplicably extended to 7 consecutive days of trial. The random sampling method was a little too crazy and targeted. It wasn't hard to guess that the old master might have secretly made things difficult for him. At that time, old Master Jin's attitude was very clear. He felt that there was no need for him to get involved in this muddy water. He wanted to make Xia Guang environmental protection fail and then compensate him from other places. However, Qin Guang couldn't blame anyone. After all, they had good intentions and guaranteed that it was worth hundreds of millions. The old master just didn't understand his determination and didn't want him to get into trouble because of this matter. In this regard, Qin Guang was also quite embarrassed. In everyone's eyes, his best choice was, of course, to let go. He could extort at least tens of millions from Tiansong Water Group and then go to the old master to complain. Last time, when he resigned from his position as the director, the old master made the Shanghai Financial Group take the blame and gave him $1 billion. This time he lost the sewage treatment plant. Even if it wasn't $1 billion, it was easy to cash out 200 to 300 million. Moreover, a few days ago he got a huge bargain. He took away Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage's management company for $1. If it was someone else who received this treatment, they would probably look in the mirror and think carefully about whether they were the son of destiny. Qin Guang was too embarrassed to tell the truth to old Master Jin. He didn't let go because he felt uncomfortable. He wanted to save face and suffer. He didn't like Song Mingyuan. Even if he had to spend money, he didn't want Song Mingyuan to take advantage of him. It sounded noble, but it was actually that simple. It was such a great dream. Maybe it was a little, but more than that, it was an obsession in his heart that he couldn't tell others. Qin Guang wasn't a standard businessman. He couldn't weigh the pros and cons like ordinary businessmen. Unlike businessmen who haggled over every penny, he cared more about his own feelings. However, he couldn't say this out loud. Otherwise, he would become a laughingstock, especially the group of old masters in Yanjing. When he resigned from his position as the director of the Guangdong General Administration, Qin Guang had already explained it to the old masters in the meeting. Whether it was in the business world or the government, the logic was the same. That's your world and I can't be someone like you. It was rare for Qin Guang to have some free time, and he could finally have a good night's rest in the hotel. The next day he woke up early and went straight to the factory. When he arrived at the factory, he saw Guoming and a few other workers moving things into his temple. "What are you guys moving?" he asked as he walked closer. Seeing this, Guoming quickly moved sideways to block his line of sight. Qin Guang pushed Guoming away. "Stop blocking. Are you going to block here forever?" "Fine." He finally saw what it was. He wondered where these people got this plaster statue. That's right. It was a standard plaster statue of the Lord of the Earth. It was just that this local god's face looked slightly familiar, and there was a 70 to 80% resemblance to his own facial features. However, there was a beard underneath and he looked like a middle-aged version of himself. "Old Gua, I suddenly feel that Tianguang Corporation is still lacking a guard. You can't spend the factory's money like this. It's only been a day and you guys have to spend at least a few thousand to make this." Guoming chuckled. "Mr. Qin, you're thinking too much. This was made by our employees. We didn't use the company's money. Also, we only spent the cost price. It was made by Xiao Feng's father from the production department. You probably don't know this, but Xiao Feng's father is famous in the city for making plaster statues. He's especially good at making land statues like the god of wealth. He's an experienced craftsman." "I know that guy." Qin Guang remembered. Xiao Feng was the guy who first called him the Lord of the Earth yesterday. Guoming saw that Qin Guang didn't seem to be angry, so he asked the others to carefully move the plaster statue inside. He said, "Actually, we didn't mean anything by putting it here. Isn't it auspicious? Anyway, the house has already been built. There's no use for it. It's weird to leave it empty." Qin Guang snorted. "I understand that, but why does it look like me? I think Xiao Feng might want to guard the door too." "Mr. Qin, I'm innocent. This is a coincidence. It's definitely a coincidence." As he spoke, Xiao Feng, who was especially superstitious yesterday, suddenly appeared from the side. Qin Guang put on a straight face, looking like he wanted to strangle someone to death. He deliberately scared this troublemaker. "Then why don't you give me a reasonable explanation? Tell me, did you place my photo in front of your father and make him copy it?" Xiao Feng waved his hands. "No, I really didn't. But this does have something to do with you, Mr. Qin." Qin Guang raised his hands. "You're 3 sentences away from our Tongshan factory's main door. When I went home last night, I told my father that I needed a Lord of the Earth, but I didn't say that I was in a hurry, nor did I say what kind of person I wanted. Later he dragged me to drink. I drank a little too much and went straight to sleep. In the end, when I woke up this morning, I saw this statue in my yard. At that time, I saw that it looked like you, Mr. Qin, and I was so scared that I almost cried. I asked my father how he got it like this. He said that he was watching the highlights of the Guinness World Fair, and at the same time he used a mold that he had made before to sculpt the face of a master sculptor who was especially good at it. He said that the master was terrifying. He could carve flowers on the tip of a pencil with a small knife. He was the idol of people like him. He was a god. Then I quickly looked at the plate. Isn't that you, Mr. Qin? Qin Guang. Fine, he remembered this incident. Wasn't it what happened when he participated in the Guinness World Fair and pretended to sharpen pencils? Xiao Fang said it in a very convincing manner. Qin Guang could tell from his expression that he was telling the truth. He really wasn't messing with him on purpose. I hesitated for a long time whether I should move this plaster statue over. It would be a pity if I just threw it away. My father really liked the mold that he carved while drunk yesterday. My father said that this was the best portrait he had carved in the past 10 years. Look, Mr. Qin, these eyebrows, these bright and spirited eyes, this handsome nose bridge. It's called a plaster statue, but it's actually a work of art. When I get back, I'll get my father to add a layer of anti-corrosive varnish. Can be preserved for decades or even centuries. This is comparable to the statue of Guandi in the famous Guandi Temple in Tangshan City. The more Xiao Fang spoke, the more excited he became. Mr. Qin, let me say something rebellious. The gods in the heavens believe in it, and if they don't, they won't. We villagers pay attention to this. If Tangshan Factory can operate stably under the protection of this statue, then wouldn't this statue ensure the safety of Tangshan City? This is the true lord of the land. In a few years, when our Tangshan Factory does well, people will remember our good deeds and come here to worship this handsome statue of the land. Although this statue looks similar to you, Mr. Qin, once it stands here, it won't just be your problem. This place, our factory, is the dragon vein of Tangshan City. The statue of the land suppresses the dragon vein here, so it can't be touched. Most importantly, this statue of the land is really handsome, right? Qin Guang immediately retreated in defeat. Handsome, it's indeed handsome. What you said makes sense. How about this, I'll go take a stroll in the laboratory first. He was practically running away in panic. As Xiao Fang spoke, his face glowed with incomparable sincerity, as if moving the statue of the land would cause the entire Tangshan city to shake. After walking far away, he turned back to look. The statue of the land had completely placed Qin Guang's face in. Xiao Fang took out 3 incense sticks from nowhere. Guoming was at the side taking out a lighter to light the incense for him. A few seconds later, those bastards actually knelt down in unison. Qin Guang had goosebumps all over his body. Forget it, forget it. Out of sight, out of mind. Yo, what a rare guest. You finally remembered to come to our laboratory to pay your respects to the researchers. The moment Qin Guang pushed open the laboratory door, Hua Ling, who was holding a test tube to pour the medicine, squinted her eyes and teased him when she saw him. Zhong Yu was fiddling with the water bath pot. It looked like she was preparing to test the total phosphorus. Qin Guang randomly found a chair and sat down. Senior Hualing, look at what you're saying. Haven't I been tormented enough for the past few days? Hualing chuckled. Who cares? Just sit there like a statue of a god. I feel like you're about to become an immortal. Qin Guang flipped open the experiment notebook on the desk next to him and casually flipped through it. If I really become an immortal, I'll give Senior Hualing a spot to follow me to the heavens. Zhong Yu covered her mouth and laughed. Hualing rolled her eyes. Who wants to follow you to the heavens? There are only old immortals in the heavens. There are no handsome young men. You should just take Teacher Zhuo to the heavens. Qin Guang did not dare to respond to Hualing's words. That he changed the topic. Oh right, you're still working on photocatalysts, right? How is it? Are there any substantial results? Can it be used in our Tangshan factory? Zhong Yu plugged in the water bath pot and turned back to sit next to Qin Guang. Sai, let's not talk about this anymore. This time Hualing and I actually came here to verify the results of our previous work with Teacher Zhuo's project team and show you our data. Zhong Yu opened the Excel file on the computer. The screen was densely packed with data that the two of them had worked on in the past few months. It was generally divided into the following categories. Pure photocatalysts for reducing COD, ammonia, nitrogen, and total phosphorus. Well, it was almost equal to 0. After photocatalysts catalyzed the breaking of macromolecular chains, the biochemical removal rate of the same kind of sewage in the pilot simulator had a slight effect, but it was not particularly obvious. Photocatalysts had almost no effect on the biochemical effect of phenol pollutants. Photocatalysts had almost no effect on the biochemical effect of ester pollutants. Photocatalysts had almost no effect on the removal of heavy metals from precipitated floccules. Qin Guang was too lazy to look at the data one by one. He only glanced at the removal rate that the two of them had converted. It was quite disappointing. Isn't this completely useless? Hua Ling finished adding the medicine and shrugged. Of course. Do you think it's so easy to develop a new kind of photocatalyst? Cabbages? Teacher Zhou pondered in the laboratory for so long, and several other project teams worked together to barely develop a few stable structures. It's a pity that according to the results of Zhong Yu and my on-site verification, it's still a long way from practical use. Zhong Yu said, "You can't say that. Every new structure of a photocatalyst represents a new possibility. What we're doing now may seem ineffective, but maybe it will have a miraculous effect when it comes to certain special pollutants. Or maybe in industrial production, it will have a miraculous effect on the catalytic synthesis of certain chemical products. It can't be said that the new structure is meaningless and useful. It's just that we have to spend more time and energy to find the right use. It's just like when Edison invented the electric light. Before that, who would have thought that tungsten could be used as a filament for electric lights?" Qin Guang applauded. "What Zhong Yu said makes sense." Hua Ling crossed her legs. "What's the use of that? Just like Zhong Yu and I, we spent several months of effort, but in the end, we only verified that our new structure can't be used in the complex sewage environment of Tangshan factory. What we're doing now is to verify that the filament can be used in one of the thousands of elimination methods before tungsten. The real thing that can be remembered and the real result is always the last step. Everyone knew about Edison, but who knew about the failed researchers in the Edison project team? The elimination method we're doing is the most laborious and the most meaningless." Qin Guang couldn't refute this. Looking at the densely packed experimental data that the two of them had listed, it was indeed quite laborious. Every time they verified it, they had to compare the concentration of pollutants before and after the test, and they had to control the necessary conditions of the laboratory to a very precise degree. Eliminating all interference factors just to find a slight difference between the conditions with and without the photocatalyst, they had to spend several days or even a month testing hundreds or even thousands of data. This kind of work was boring and lacked a sense of accomplishment. Zhong Yu was much more optimistic. But as long as we can find something useful, for example in the pharmaceutical synthesis section, if we can increase the product yield by 1%, that would be a profit of hundreds of millions of US dollars. Or in the field of environmental protection, if we can increase the removal rate by 1% and save 1% of operating costs, that would be a profit of hundreds of millions of US dollars. Hua Ling shrugged. "Anyway, with what we've done so far, it's hopeless. We'll have to see if Teacher Zhou can bring back some surprises from the United States." After saying that, Hua Ling suddenly covered her mouth. She realized that she had spilled the beans. Qin Guang was slightly surprised. "Teacher Zhou is coming back?" Hua Ling waved her hands. "Don't ask me, I don't know anything. Hey, what are you doing here today? Are you here to help us?" Qin Guang saw that she didn't want to say it, so he thought that there was no need to ask her. "If you don't want to say it, then forget it. I'll call and ask myself. Isn't that the same?" Hua Ling wanted to say something, but Zhong Yu immediately covered her mouth and stuffed an experiment manual into Qin Guang's hands. "You look very free today. Aren't you a member of our lab? Why don't you learn and give it a try?" Qin Guang was thinking about Zhou Xian. He missed her a little, but he didn't know how to face her. In the end, he still plucked up the courage to call Zhou Xian, but he couldn't get through. Her phone was turned off. After that, Qin Guang returned to the laboratory and started messing around with the two of them. Maybe Zhou Xian was on a plane and Qin Guang planned to call her after a while. If Zhou Xian really came back from the United States, it was reasonable for him to pick her up. Until the afternoon, Qin Guang still couldn't get through to her. However, he had to leave the lab temporarily because a few uninvited guests had come to the factory. Song Ningyuan had personally led a team to meet Qin Guang. Qin Guang didn't want to talk to him, but Song Ningyuan was accompanied by the head of Tongshan's Environmental Protection Department, Deputy Chief Peng, whom he had already met once, and the Deputy Chief of the Municipal Administration. He had to meet them. Chapter 1035. Song Ningyuan was sitting casually in the conference room of the Tongshan factory office building. Although he had arrived in a hurry, there was no sign of anxiety on his face. Instead, he looked exceptionally calm. From time to time he would whisper to Zheng He, who had come with him to join in the fun. From time to time he would nod at the local officials of Tangshan who were sitting opposite him. On the way from Wujing to Tangshan he had made one phone call after another. After receiving a clear answer, his mood had turned from gloomy to sunny, and he was indescribably satisfied. Qin Guang, let's see what you're going to do. Song Ningyuan crossed his legs, picked up the teacup in front of him and took a comfortable sip. Things had taken a turn for the better. Even the tea in the factory tasted sweeter. On the other side, Qin Guang walked into the office surrounded by the middle management of the Tangshan factory. He went straight to the main seat, then looked to the side and saw Song Ningyuan and Zheng He looking at him meaningfully. Qin Guang frowned slightly, rolled his eyes and pointed at Zheng He. This is Mr. Song Ningyuan from Tiansong, right? The smug look on Song Ningyuan and Zheng He's faces disappeared in an instant, and they were both speechless. What the hell is going on? You actually mistook us for each other. Song Ningyuan suppressed his anger, stood up and said, Mr. Qin, you're forgetful. We've met once before. How can you mistake me for someone else? I'm Song Ningyuan and this is Zheng He, a member of the board of directors of New Radiance Group. Our two companies have close cooperation, so today, we're here to see the Tangshan industrial factory that Tiansong Water Company is about to take over. Zheng He said sarcastically, What? Qin Guang, you've even forgotten your old classmate? Forget it, brother, let's not play dumb with him anymore. Qin Guang, my brother and I are cousins. This Tangshan industrial factory doesn't just belong to Tiansong Water Company. New Radiance Group also has a stake in it. Tangshan is also one of the top industrial bases of New Radiance Group in the country. The large feed factory beside the highway exit was New Ray's pig feed industrial base. Whether as a partner of Tiansong or considering the interests of my New Ray Group, I need to represent the company to come down and take a look at the situation of Tangshan industrial factory. Qin Guang pretended to be enlightened. Oh, I remember now. Sai, look at my memory. Zheng He, I have a deeper impression of your face, so I accidentally forgot it. But we're not old classmates, we're not in the same class, we're not in the same profession, and we don't have any friendship. Right? Then he suddenly changed the topic. He was still smiling a moment ago, but his face suddenly became serious. He looked at Song Ningyuan coldly. As for Song Ningyuan, Mr. Song, I don't know why you're here today, but I can tell you clearly that you're not welcome here. I don't care what will happen to Tangshan Industrial in the future, but at least for now, I'm still in charge here. It has nothing to do with you. And you, Zheng He, you have even less to do with me. Qin Guang thought to himself as he put on airs. Sure enough, people depended on fate. He, Song Ningyuan, and Zheng He were from the two big families, so their fates were definitely incompatible. First, he offended Zheng He because of Wenwen, and then he offended Song Ningyuan because of Tang Ying. Now, for the sake of Tangshan Industrial Factory, he'd brought these two groups together. Well, now that I'm in a different position, I'm no longer the ignorant person I used to be. Even if your Tiansong Water Group and New Ray Group come together, what can you do to me? I won't give you face today. What can you do? Not satisfied? Come and hit me. Song Ningyuan and Zheng He's expressions changed. They didn't expect Qin Guang's reaction to be so extreme. In the past, when you were barefooted, you were not afraid of wearing shoes. You liked to be unreasonable. Fine, we thought that you didn't understand the situation. But now you are a big shot. Show some of your magnanimity. Tangshan City's local government's second-in-command saw that the situation wasn't looking good and quickly tried to smooth things over. Chieftain, here's the thing. Previously, when Boss Xia was managing Xiaoguang Environmental Protection, it was really difficult for Tangshan Industrial Factory to meet the standards. We saw that Xiaoguang Environmental Protection was hopeless, so we held a national competition for the management unit of Tangshan Industrial Factory in advance. After a comprehensive selection by a team of experts, Tiansong Water Group won the bid. We've already reported the results to the provincial department, and the ministry has also approved it. In addition, New Ray Group is indeed a big taxpayer in Tangshan City. It's a great help to our local development. We also have the responsibility and obligation to provide a good and stable production and operating environment for New Ray Group. So, Qin Guang responded with an O. As soon as this guy spoke, Qin Guang understood. No wonder Song Ningyuan wanted to come and this second-in-command followed him. He was clearly on Song Ningyuan and Zheng He's side. Thinking of this, Qin Guang quietly turned his gaze to Deputy Chief Peng, who had been hiding in the corner pretending to be offline. This chubby guy gave Qin Guang a fleeting look, but he didn't dare to look directly at him. Sure enough, he also understood. Where there were people, there would be underworld. At least in Tangshan City, Tiansong Water Group was very well managed. There were many of his own people, so it was no wonder that Song Ningyuan still refused to give up. But so what? Qin Guang said, I'm a dragon crossing the river and I'm a local snake. Besides, it's a competition of connections. Who doesn't have connections? I'm also a native of Dechuan province, so it's not like I can't find people, okay? On the other side, Song Ningyuan saw that his people were in control of the situation, so he got up and said with a smile, Qin Guang, I'll be frank. Today, I'm here for the operation rights of Tangshan Industrial Plant. Our previous bidding was in line with the 3 principles of fairness, and public supervision from all walks of life. Our Tiansong Water Group's technical and economic strength is the only one in the country that can perfectly solve the Tangshan Industrial Plant's long-standing problem. Although I don't know what means you used to pass the inspection the day before yesterday, Xiaguang Environmental Protection's operating period will still expire in 4 months. Now Xiaguang Environmental Protection and my Tiansong Water Group have 2 choices in front of us. Either we wait for Xiaguang Environmental Protection's last 4 months of operating rights to smoothly hand over, or I'll make the decision and represent Tiansong Water Group to provide appropriate compensation to your company, and we'll complete the handover procedures ahead of time. Qin Guang, we did have some personal grudges before, but I think we should put aside such meaningless personal feelings in the business world. I came with sincerity and my compensation proposal can also reduce your losses. I don't need to pay tens of millions for nothing, but I'm also responsible for Tangshan City, and I hope to solve the Tangshan Industrial Plant's cancerous problem as soon as possible. Qin Guang pretended to have just understood. I see. Then don't I have to thank you? Song Ningyun grinned. I don't dare to thank you. It's just business after all. But without my compensation proposal, you'd still have nothing after 4 months. The second in command of Tangshan also tried to persuade him. Chief Chen, Mr. Song is right. We also know that there's something fishy about you taking over Xiaguang Environmental Protection, so we came up with this proposal after a last-minute discussion. It's also for your consideration, Chief Chen. Qin Guang looked at Song Ningyuan with a burning gaze, then looked at Xie Yu who was standing behind him. Previously, this manager Xie behind you offered me 50 million but I rejected it. Song Ningyuan saw that he had relented and thought that he had been moved. He was secretly delighted. After all, it's only 4 months. Although 50 million is not considered low, I can personally make the decision. We can discuss this further. I guarantee that my company's evaluation department will do their best to find a figure that will satisfy you, okay? Qin Guang grinned at him and held up 2 fingers. Song Ningyuan thought he was going to add 20 million. 70 million? Qin Guang shook his head. Song Ningyuan sucked in a cold breath. Don't tell me you want 200 million? Qin Guang continued to shake his head. What do you mean? 2 billion? Don't joke around. Qin Guang grinned. I mean, you're very stupid. If I wanted to sell, I would have discussed the transfer fee with you when that manager Xie of yours came. Do you need to go through all this trouble now? Song Ningyuan's face turned green and white, cursing in his heart. He felt like a scholar meeting a soldier, unable to reason with him. He hated this kind of idiot the most when doing business. Are you crazy? Can't you talk it out properly? Xing, he slammed the table. Qin Guang. What right do you have to scold me? Qin Guang turned to look at him. The table in front of you is made of gold-threaded nanmu. I bought it for more than 7 million and now it's cracked. Do as you see fit. Xing, he said anxiously, which eye of yours saw it crack? Qin Guang was expressionless. You're the young master of new light. Don't you understand this? The value of a real luxury item will plummet even if it's just a crack. Just wait for my lawyer's letter. Song Ningyuan interrupted him. We're here to talk to you about Tangshan Industrial Plant today, not about the table. Qin Guang looked back at Song Ningyuan with a puzzled expression. Strange. Was what I said just now not clear enough? Or did you not understand? Or are you really stupid? Song Ningyuan suppressed his anger. Qin Guang, business is business. Why are you looking for trouble? To tell you the truth, I'm determined to get Tangshan Industrial Plant. Really? Then I won't give up an inch. Song Ningyuan's mouth twitched. I know what you're thinking. You think you can renegotiate the operating period by getting Lu Chemical to invest in the reconstruction? Stop dreaming. The deduction of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection's term was done in accordance with the law and regulations. Xiaoguang Environmental Protection has been completely eliminated. Even if you get Lu Chemical, it's useless. Do you think the bidding is a joke? You want to renegotiate? The second-in-command of Tangshan also coughed lightly and said, Mr. Qin, Mr. Song is right. Even if it's rebuilt, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection doesn't have the right to operate it. Unless you form a new company and change the main operator. But in this case, we have already completed the bidding for BOT operation. Tiansong Water Group won the bid. This is a sure thing. Qin Guang watched the two of them sing and cooperate with each other. They even blocked his way out. Sure enough, they came prepared. In fact, he also had a headache. Although Song Ningyuan and the local officials' words were unpleasant to hear, they did stand on the right side. Now that the public opinion had exploded, although he had turned things around twice and barely stabilized the situation, Tangshan Industrial Plant was still inevitably in the eyes of the people of the country. He couldn't risk the world's condemnation to engage in under-the-table operations. No matter how hateful Song Ningyuan and Tiansong Water Group were, there was no denying that they did have a way in the water treatment industry. They were worthy of being the strongest leader in the country and had a great influence in the industry. Qin Guang, I'll say something you don't want to hear. Even if you really rebuild Tangshan plant with the Lu Corporation, do you really think it's so easy to maintain a profit while operating up to the standard? I think you should be very clear about how difficult it is to treat the water in Tangshan plant in the past few days. It's not that I, Song Ningyuan, want to brag, but looking at the whole country, I really don't think any company has the confidence to say that they can definitely operate stably and meet the standard. As for adding medicine, we don't need to beat around the bush. We have to add medicine every few days. The cost of adding medicine is millions and the cost of discharging mud is millions. This is a bottomless pit that can't be filled. Qin Guang, you have to think twice. Song Ningyuan continued to pursue the victory. On the other side, the second-in-command of Tangshan also stood up and spoke. Mr. Qin, we all know about what happened a few days ago. Before I came here, I also talked to a few nearby solid waste treatment stations and landfills. Just like the chemical sludge you used before, their capacity is completely saturated. It really isn't a long-term solution in the future. Qin Guang, I'll be so bold as to make a decision again. 80 million. I can't go any higher. Transfer it now and the transfer fee is 80 million. How about it? Just treat it as me paying for you for free. Although Song Ningyuan was annoying, he was also a talent. He was well-versed in the art of negotiation. He felt that he had finally pulled Qin Guang into the mindset of a normal person. He finally had the upper hand in the negotiation, and he increased the price appropriately to further hammer Qin Guang's bottom line. Zheng He had been watching the show from the side from the beginning to the end. He also interrupted at the right time. Qin Guang, a wise man submits to circumstances. Giving others convenience is also giving yourself convenience. Take a step back and the world will be wide open. Let's not talk about anything else. You've seen the Tangshan River below. As a person, you can't go against your conscience. You have to be responsible for ordinary people. Actually, Zheng He didn't understand the sense of responsibility of a commoner. He just knew in his heart that Qin Guangzhou would be at a disadvantage and so would Qin Guangzhou. In any case, seeing Qin Guangzhou at a disadvantage made him feel good. Aren't your fists hard? Aren't your connections strong? But you claim to be a good person. As long as you claim to be a good person, you won't be able to get over the hurdle in your heart. Sooner or later, you'll have to admit defeat. I came here today to follow my cousin and watch you admit defeat in front of everyone, to wash away your shame. Song Ningyuan coughed lightly, indicating for Zheng He to restrain himself. Qin Guang turned to look at him, his heart burning with anger. What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Coming here to act cool? All of you are echoing each other. White faces, black faces, flowery faces, red faces, all of you are here. Are you acting in a play or singing a Beijing opera? If a tiger doesn't show its might, do you guys really think I'm a big white cat? Chapter 1036. If you provoke me, I will really dare to go against the opposition of the whole world and hold the Tangshan factory in my hands. Do you believe me? The old man is a martial sage realm expert, the world's #1 martial artist, and the former chief of the Guangding General Bureau. How can he be defeated by you? Conscience. Even if others want to comment on my conscience, it's not your turn, Zheng He. If you provoke me, I will act violently. So what if I break the pot? I don't believe that I can't handle a Tangshan factory if I wave a check all over the world to find people. Your Tiansong Water Company's technical strength is very strong, but are you the world's number one? Can't I directly introduce international advanced technology? He was not a good-tempered person. It was already very kind of him to restrain himself from punching people on the spot. He had been silent and others gradually could not figure out his thoughts. As the atmosphere gradually turned heavy, Qin Guang took a deep breath. Just when he was about to ask them to leave, his phone suddenly rang. It was a call from Lu Fei. Qin Guang slightly restrained himself. I will go out first to take the call. He took the cell phone and went out. Calculating the time, Lu Fei's proposal should have passed the shareholders' meeting of Lu's chemical industry group. Sister Lu Fei, how is it? Qin Guang, I'm sorry. There was an unexpected situation. My proposal at the shareholders' meeting was rejected. Qin Guang's eyes slightly narrowed. He was a little disappointed, but it was not a thunderbolt. 400 million yuan was not something he could not bear. He only regretted that he could not use the mature technical team of the water company of Lu's chemical industry group. It's okay, I will think of a way later. Listen to me. I know you are not short of money. In fact, it was not a matter of money that was rejected this time. I have communicated with the chief consultant of our water company here. He thinks that it is too difficult to deal with Tangshan Industrial Factory. Even if we meet the operating standards, the operating costs will be difficult to control. He suggested that we should choose a simpler project. It is best to sell Tangshan Industrial Factory as soon as possible. Qin Guang resolutely said, Impossible. That's what I said, so our chief consultant told me something else. Tiansong has already contacted all the top teams in the domestic industry. Even if you and I find a way to raise money to continue this operation, I'm afraid we'll face a situation where there's no one available. Qin Guang was slightly surprised. That can't be right. At most I'll just look for my school's teacher. However, Lu Fei immediately rejected the idea. Although your school's teachers are quite skilled, they've already failed once at Tangshan Factory a few years ago. In addition, even the teachers in your school, a few of the top experts have signed consulting contracts with Tiansong. Qin Guang turned his face in the direction of the conference room and finally came to a realization. That damned Song Ning had come prepared. Then I will import the technology from abroad. Lu Fei rejected him again. My chief consultant also told me that when it comes to water treatment, other countries are not as advanced as our country. Our national conditions are different from others. In the end, the treatment of environmental pollution still depends on the local conditions. Foreign monks may not be able to read our scriptures. Many of their new technologies may seem advanced, but they may not be applicable. If we rashly import them, it may not be worth it. There are many similar examples all over the country. Qin Guang sighed. So there's really no other way? Lu Fei also sighed. In a sense, that's true. Okay, I'm negotiating with Song Ningyun right now. I'll think about it. After saying that, Qin Guang hung up the phone and leaned against the wall. His mind was in a daze. If he hadn't been personally involved in these things, he really didn't expect doing business to be such a headache and vexing thing. The difference between running a company in the real sense and simply hyping up a project in the past was really too big. Am I really not suitable for this business? Qin Guang asked himself. But if he wanted him to stop and admit defeat, he remembered how Song Ningyuan and Jing he pretended to be negotiating, but actually came to show off in front of him. He was furious. Especially now that he understood Song Ningyuan's secret actions, Qin Guang recalled Song Ningyuan's words and felt that he was even more repulsive. Even though he seemed to be giving in to raise the price to 80 million in Qin Guang's mind, it was like showing off and dismissing a beggar. Of course, with Su Lijing Kainan Province's Bao family, and Dechuan Xiang family as living examples of people who fell under Qin Guang's butcher knife, even if Song Ningyuan and Jing he had 100 guts, they still wouldn't have the guts to treat Qin Guang like ordinary people. They endured, restrained themselves, only laughing in their hearts, but on the surface they looked like they were only talking business. However, Qin Guang's acting skills were too good, and his eyesight was too sharp. With a single glance, he could tell that Song Ningyun and Jing he were rejoicing in his misfortune. Sometimes, it wasn't necessarily a good thing to see too deeply into the affairs of the world. Qin Guang truly couldn't allow himself to be muddle-headed. He was not in a hurry to return to the conference room, instead taking a deep breath and calling Guoming over. Old Gui, in the contract Xia Guang signed previously, there was a clear clause that could extend the term, right? Guoming thought for a while before nodding. There is such a clause. For example, when Xia Guang was managing the Tangshan industrial factory, on one hand he operated stably up to the standards, and on the other hand achieved major technological advancements that could at least be awarded a first-rate National Science and Technology Progress Award. Or according to the rules, our emissions only need to reach the third-rate standard. However, if we can reach the first-rate standard, things will be different. If we can achieve both of these conditions, we can first apply to become a national high-tech enterprise. On one hand we can obtain tax relief and on the other we can renegotiate the term. That's very difficult. Qin Guang sighed. Guoming nodded. Of course it's difficult, almost impossible. We can't even reach the third-rate standard. Qin Guang, however, suddenly made a decision. Fine then. I'll use this reason to stall them first. Guoming was slightly surprised. Not selling? Qin Guang nodded heavily. Not selling even if it costs my life. With that, Qin Guang immediately returned to the conference room. Song Mingyun seemed to have already guessed whose call he had just received and what had been said. The confident smile on his face deepened. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang waved his hand. Let's end the meeting here for today. Send the guests off. Song Mingyuan and the rest had blank looks on their faces. What was going on? Qin Guang glared coldly at everyone. Don't you understand what I said? I said send the guests off. The second in command of Tangshan still wanted to say something, but the moment he met Qin Guang's gaze he shrunk back, not daring to say anything more. This person was in a fit of anger and had turned into a powder keg. They could not afford to offend him. Qin Guang. Xing, he opened his mouth to speak. But he was immediately interrupted by Qin Guang. Xing, you'd better leave while I can still hold it in. Back then you brought people to ambush me and wanted to break my limbs. Now even if I break your tendons in front of everyone, your family won't be able to do anything to me. Do you believe me? Zheng He's face instantly turned pale. When Qin Guang mentioned this matter, the chill in his voice made him feel goosebumps all over his body. In his heart he regretted getting involved in this matter. He wanted to see Qin Guang make a fool out of himself, but he ended up being threatened by Qin Guang in public, so he did not dare to say anything. Zheng He really did not dare to say anything harsh. Losing face was a small matter, but breaking his limbs was a big deal. Zheng He knew that Qin Guang would do as he said. Seeing that the situation was not good, Song Mingyun quickly forced a smile on his face. It's a misunderstanding. What happened in the past was a misunderstanding. Well, since you're busy today, we'll come again another day. Don't be angry, Mr. Qin. You know that I'm doing this out of good intentions. Get lost. Qin Guang pointed at the door. Song Mingyuan's words were cut off halfway. He quickly cupped his hands again and turned to run. The others followed. When Song Mingyuan and the others were far away, the second in command of Tangshan and the people in charge of the Environmental Protection Bureau were also quite embarrassed. Deputy Chief Pang, who had dealt with Qin Guang before, came out to smooth things over. Mr. Qin, today Qin Guang's expression turned from gloomy to sunny. He patted the fat chief, who was especially courageous. In order to uphold justice for the people of Tangshan, he was not afraid to offend him. Chief Pang, you don't have to say anything. I understand. I don't blame you. You're just doing things according to the rules. Deputy Chief Pang sighed. Sigh. The second in command of Tangshan was indeed a wily old fox. Even so, he did not feel too embarrassed. He sighed. But if that's the case, in 4 months, Mr. Qin? Qin Guang grinned. What's the rush? Isn't there still 4 months? Isn't there a floating clause in the contract that Xia Guang signed with the city? Of course we know that. We've also studied the contract carefully more than once. The floating clause was added in response to the country's policy of encouraging technological advancement. But it's not feasible at all. Qin Guang was impatient. He waved his hand. Whether it's feasible or not, we'll know when the time comes. I haven't given him the death sentence yet. Oh right, I'll have to trouble everyone to help me inform the other enterprises in the industrial park to cooperate as much as possible. From now on, reduce the water intake. Whether it's reconstruction or otherwise, I'll give you an answer next week at the latest. Deputy Chief Pang was slightly shocked. You really want to rebuild? Qin Guang nodded. This is just one of the options. If I want to rebuild, I won't be able to live with my own money. Who can stop me? If Song Mingyuan hadn't played tricks with the top experts in the country and put $200 million in front of me, I would really be interested in talking to him. As for now, since you're being heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. There's no harm in making things clear in front of all of you. If I don't give up Tongshan Industrial Plant, no one can take it away from me. If it really can't meet the standards, then I'll change all the enterprises in this industrial park to labor-intensive OEM factories like Foxconn without sewage discharge. You should know that I have the power to do that. With that, Qin Guang swaggered away, leaving the group of people in the meeting room to exchange glances. As Qin Guang's spokesperson, Guoming could only shrug helplessly as Deputy Chief Pang and the others stared at him anxiously. Our CO Qin is quite hard to please. Zhuo Jingxi's phone still couldn't be reached. Qin Guang wasn't in the mood to go anywhere else, so he ran over to Hua Ling and Zhong Yu's lab and sat down. At this moment, his mind was filled with Guoming's previous major technological innovation that could at least win the National First Class Science and Technology Progress Award. Now that things had come to this, he finally found the key point. If he wanted to get through this once and for all, the only way to legitimately was to get technology. New technology. What an awesome new technology. In today's world, what was the most awesome technology? Perhaps there were many. Computer CPUs, polysilicon photolithography machines, nanomanufacturing processes, artificial intelligence, these were all top new technologies. But in the environmental protection industry there were only a few. Genomic analysis of characteristic bacteria was one of them. Another was the research and development and application of photocatalysts in water pollution treatment, which was definitely the most cutting-edge technology. He didn't have any other good ideas, so he simply sat in the lab and got closer to the so-called cutting-edge technology. At least it could inspire his thinking, right? Qin Guang sat in the lab and drank some water. The tea inside had been soaked for too long and had lost its flavor. He shook off the tea inside, then casually tore open a bag of Hua Ling's Nescafe coffee on his desk, poured it into a cup, picked up the Heavenly Holy Grail, and randomly took a stick from the shelf on the table to stir the cup. My head hurts. I'm so annoyed. Sister Hualing, when are you going to get some reliable results from your experiment? I remember that there are laboratories abroad that can already be used, right? The water that they purify with photocatalysts is almost as good as purified water. I'm at the end of my rope now, so I'm counting on you too. Qin Guang saw that Hua Ling and Zhong Yu were still busy and couldn't help but interrupt them. Hua Ling turned around and rolled her eyes at him. I know about that Japanese laboratory. It's hard to say whether it's true or not, but the cost of their photocatalyst paint is hundreds of thousands of dollars. The catalytic reaction also requires ultra-high-intensity ultraviolet radiation. It's probably as far from industrial application as Sun Wukong. Zhong Yu looked at Qin Guang's hand in horror. Qin Guang, what are you doing? You used our photocatalyst carrier to stir the coffee. Qin Guang was shocked. His hand shook and the shiny silver metal stick in his hand fell into the cup, completely buried in the instant coffee. Hua Ling and Zhong Yu covered their heads. Oh my god. A sample worth more than $18,000. It's over. Professor Xu will kill us. Chapter 1037. Qin Guang held the cup in a daze. Looking at the grief-stricken faces of the two, he knew that he had accidentally made a big mistake. He awkwardly feigned ignorance. Don't be afraid. Don't panic. It's 18,000 yuan, right? It's okay. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it. Hua Ling rushed in front of him and said anxiously, hurry up and take it out. This isn't a problem of money. The two of us only brought so many samples and they were all prepared by the seniors in the lab with great difficulty. Just the stick in your hand would take at least a week to make. You soaked it in the hot coffee and it's all gone. Qin Guang froze. Since it was someone else's hard work, he had committed a grave sin. Sorry. I didn't mean it. As Qin Guang spoke, he put his hand into the coffee, his face full of awkwardness. Hua Ling wanted to pull his hand back again. She shouted, don't put your hand in, pour it out. Are you crazy? It's boiling water. Qin Guang shook his head nonchalantly. Small problem. Not to mention boiling water, I can even put my hand in a pan of oil. My iron palm. Zhong Yu hugged her head with both hands, wishing she could strangle him. Who said it was a small problem? This is the end of the world. Hua Ling bared her fangs and brandished her claws. She pressed her hands on Qin Guang's head and pulled his hair. I understand the logic, but I just want to strangle you. The chubby northeastern lady was so tough. She would not make a fuss if she could make a move. 2 days ago she had received a 100,000 yuan bonus from this guy, so he could be considered her boss. However, Hua Ling was straightforward and insensitive. She did not realize that the boss could not be beaten but should be curried favor. As for Zhongyu, she was Qin Guang's hometown in Lilai County, and they even attended the same high school. Thus, she couldn't bring out the slightest bit of respect for Boss Qin. So when she saw Hua Ling fiddling with Qin Guang's hair, she couldn't help following suit. Poor Master Guang, the world's #1 martial artist, had just publicly clamored in the conference room that he would cut off the tendons of others' hands and feet. He had talked a lot of nonsense and said that the old man's face fruit was extremely powerful. He could be said to be the most domineering and unparalleled in the world. No one dared to provoke him. However, in less than 10 minutes he had been beaten up by 2 female master students in the laboratory. His dignity and image had been shattered. Qin Guang thought to himself, fortunately there are no outsiders here. If I had known earlier I would have been better off bald. I don't even have hair for you to pull. Alright, stop fooling around. I'm taking something. Do you still want it? Zhongyu said, this is a heat-sensitive photocatalyst. It's gone after soaking in boiling water, okay? Oh, I see. Then I'll continue to stir the coffee. Hua Ling said, **T. If he's alive, I want to see the rod. If he's dead, I want to see the corpse. Hurry up and leave. Then don't disturb me. The metal rod was a little short and the coffee wasn't transparent. Hence, Qin Guang was struggling to resist the 2 ladies ravaging his hair. At the same time he stretched out his index and middle finger to feel around in the boiling coffee. However, the cup was a little deep. He grabbed it twice with his fingertips and shook it off. Qin Guang's heart ached. He simply clenched his 5 fingers and used one of the 400,000 techniques he learned in the realm of true martial, the Phoenix Claw bone shrinking technique. His entire hand reached into the cup. Come out, you little whore. As he was thinking in his heart, suddenly his head went black and he subconsciously felt dizzy. It happened again, this familiar feeling. Unlike the previous times when he actively entered the world in the cup, this was the sudden and unreasonable trigger mechanism of the world in the cup that he hadn't entered for a long time. At this time, Qin Guang only felt an inexplicable and terrible suction coming from his right hand that reached into the cup. His body became light in an instant and his whole body was rapidly compressed. In the next second he appeared over Cloud City and fell straight down with a dumbfounded look. Strange, I remember Lily said that after entering One Line Sky, shouldn't there be a day's notice before the task of the world in the cup suddenly appeared? Why did it come so suddenly this time without warning and unreasonably? This feeling was exactly the same as when he encountered the world of Sword Tower, the Racing God training ground and even sharpening pencils. Could it be that the heavenly Holy Grail had degenerated? It was upgraded in reverse again. This time it was not One Line Sky but back to Jianling Tian? Wasn't this too much of a scam? Qin Guang was still free-falling down but his mind was blank. Then with a splash he fell into the water. The water was warm and smelled a little milky. When he poured a little into his mouth it was slightly sweet. How wasn't I in Cloud City? Why did I fall directly into the water? Could it be that I skipped Cloud City this time and directly entered the world in the cup? No, that's not right. It should be coffee, not milk. This smell doesn't feel right. Oh no, could it be that the milk-flavored wastewater that the Holy Grail fell into the aerobic pool last time and entered the Holy Grail through time and space? Impossible, there was no milk-flavored wastewater, right? So he thought in a daze as he sat up. Unexpectedly, as soon as he poked his head out, he was punched in the head. This punch was extremely heavy and had a very familiar taste. The Lily-style punch that he had practiced thousands of times on his body had hit him so hard that he saw stars. Before he could scold Lioli for taking the wrong medicine, he heard a sharp roar in his ears. It was Lioli herself. How did you come in? Qin Guang shook his head and then glared. You asked me. I also want to know. Aren't you the clearest? Be reasonable, please. You hit me every time. Even a clay bodhisattva has some temper. The moment he opened his eyes, he immediately understood why Lioli had such a big reaction and what the milk-flavored water was. It turned out that when he entered the world in the cup, Lioli was actually taking a milk bath. At this moment he was in the same big bathtub with Lioli, who was naked without the cover of clouds and mist, and without the cover of a bikini feather dress. It seemed that the world in the cup came so suddenly that Lioli was completely unprepared and caught him unprepared. He looked over and all he saw was a snow-white body that was crystalline, translucent, gorgeous, and perfect to the point it completely exceeded his imagination. The magnificent scene in front of him at this moment could be described like this. He still remembered that year the mountain was covered by heavy snow and the mountain range was layered. That mountain was round and tall. Everyone looked over and saw silver scales everywhere. At the top of the mountain, wintersweet was in full bloom, embellished with cherry red, adding some spring greenery in this cool winter. And these two wintersweet, Qin Guang silently wiped his nose. He didn't know whether it was the blood caused by Lioli's hammer or his own nosebleed. Forget it, I can't say anymore or I'll die. Although it wasn't the first time he had tried to take advantage of Lioli's eyes, it was the first time he was able to size her up at such a close distance and see her so clearly. Qin Guang thought silently. Although the old man had seen a lot, the goddess was indeed a goddess, a real god. Lioli's figure was different from a human's. No matter how perfect a human's figure was, there was a limit. But a god's was not like this. Qin Guang focused his eyes, trying to find even the slightest flaw from every angle. No, there was no flaw at all. Every angle was the perfect ratio of the golden ratio. No, even every inch of her skin, the distribution of every pore, was the golden ratio that could withstand the test of time. Even every inch of the pink plum blossom's petals strictly adhered to the perfect proportion. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that there was such a creation in the world. Was it because she was inexplicably punched just now? What was that? He had no impression at all. In the short life of a human, if he had the chance to see such a perfect creation, it was worth it even if his life was shortened by 50 years. Life should be like the summer flowers, only seeking one night of brilliance. At this moment, this moment will be the highest point of my life. Bang! It was another kick to Qin Guang's chest that sent the stunned Qin Guang flying who knew how far away. Chapter 1038. He floated in the air but he couldn't feel the pain in his chest at all. His mind was still thinking about that beautiful glimpse just now. With a plop, it fell to the ground like a rag. Qin Guang looked at the sky above Cloud City with a blank expression, a silly smile on his face. With a splash, Lioli flew out of the bathtub. While she was still flying in the air, the bikini feather dress appeared out of nowhere. Eat my battle axe style god-slaying kick. As Lioli flew in the direction of Qin Guang, her slender right leg emitted divine light. She who was so ashamed that she wanted to go crazy actually used her divine power. The terrifying deity slaying kick descended from the sky, and a boundlessly huge golden axe that was covered in mysterious divine runes appeared in the void above Cloud City. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled on the blade of the axe, causing the air to tremble violently, and the sound of a huge bell rang out. If Lioli's kick landed, Qin Guang would die. At this critical moment, an overwhelming number of vines flew over from behind. These vines were extremely fast and each one was like a jade that contained light. In an instant they tightly wrapped around Lioli's body. Sister Lioli. Calm down. Think twice. You can't slash Qin Guang to death. Dear Cry's lowly voice came from the fruit outside Cloud City. But it was useless. Lioli, who was already in a killing frenzy, was still struggling, desperately trying to chop off her leg. The vines also surged with divine light. Dear Cry also used his divine power. Finally, Lioli's god-slaying kick stopped about 2 inches away from the tip of Qin Guang's nose. It was pulled back by Dear Cry, who didn't care about his life. Qin Guang was still in a daze. He didn't even know that he had walked past the gates of hell. Looking at the 3-inch little white fragrant lotus in front of him, he stuck out his tongue for some reason. Ah! Crazy. Calm down. Calm down, Sister Lioli. Look at what he's done. Not only did he look at me, he even licked me. Sister Lioli, this isn't the first time you've been licked by him. Besides, you can't blame him. He's just an ordinary person now. He can't resist your god's power, let alone the temptation of your god's body. It's normal. I'm going to die of anger. Oh no, I'm going to die of anger. Calm down. Calm down. Think about it. This means that your divine body is becoming more and more perfect. It means that you are beautiful. Think about it, as divine emperors, Every inch of our skin contains the profound mysteries of divinity that we have painstakingly cultivated. As an ordinary mortal, Qin Guang is addicted to it. That's reasonable. After an unknown period of time, Lu Li finally calmed down. On the other side, Qin Guang also gradually came back to his senses. Although he was in a daze just now, he still remembered what had happened. Thinking about it carefully, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. In view of this, even if he was indignant and felt that Lu Li had gone too far, Qin Guang still decisively decided to be a coward. He followed Lu Ming's words and added, "That's right, the most beautiful Lord Lu Li in the God realm is compassionate and compassionate. I really didn't do it on purpose. I'm also puzzled. The Heaven Line Cup hasn't appeared for almost 2 months. I wasn't mentally prepared at all and was suddenly pulled in. What's going on?" Lu Li was still angry. "Who knows what's going on? Don't ask me." Qin Guang turned his gaze to Lu Ming, who was peeking out from the edge of the city wall. "Lord Lu Ming, do you know?" Lu Ming shook his fruit. "Ask the most beautiful Lord Lu Li in the God realm." Qin Guang, Emperor of the Azure and Deity Emperor Lu Ming are tied for the most beautiful in the God realm. Lu Ming was immediately satisfied. "At least you know what's good for you." Lu Li finally calmed down. "All right, don't ask me and Lu Ming. We really don't know. Ever since the real world and your real world inexplicably began to merge and get closer, and the power of the Holy Grail began to leak out, many things have exceeded your initial, my initial expectations. The changes that are happening now are also beyond the understanding of the God Emperor realm. When the 1-month deadline arrived, the Heaven Line Cup didn't appear on time. I could only roughly guess that it was because the power of the Holy Grail leaked out, and the energy reserve of the Heavenly Holy Grail was insufficient." Qin Guang asked cautiously, "Could it be that this time the Heaven Line Cup dropped to the sky of seeing the spirit again?" "That won't happen." Qin Guang was relieved. "That's good, it's good that it didn't drop. After all, it's not the first time the Holy Grail has been upgraded in reverse." Lu Ming snickered. "That's because when I greeted you for the first time, I wanted to save face and had to use high-level goods to scare you." "Shut up." Qin Guang still wanted to ask something, but it was too late. His head pointed again, and with a swish he was sucked into the space-time tunnel that appeared out of thin air above his head. Floating in the space-time tunnel, he was repeatedly thinking about what happened before. Before coming in, what was it that I wanted the most in my mind? Taking the stick out of the cup? Damn the one-line Heavenly Realm stick-pulling technique. Thinking about this skill, it's so erotic that I can't look straight at it. Wasting a precious one-line Heavenly Holy Grail realm like this. I'm so stifled that I'm about to have myocarditis. Alright, could it be because I have a lot of power of the Holy Grail in my body, and after I put my hand into the cup, I just happened to meet the conditions to trigger the Heavenly Holy Grail? Just as he was thinking, he fell into the scalding water with a splash. He hurriedly spread his internal energy all over his body to resist the heat from the outside world. What he smelled was indeed the strong smell of Nescafé instant coffee. He poked his head out of the coffee and looked around. This seemed to be a boundless sea of coffee. However, 2,000 meters away, there was a faint gray fog, making the places further away look slightly blurry and illusory. It was a little like playing a large-scale open-world single-player game, where the depth of field in the distance could only be loaded with the most basic textures. Qin Guang looked up again. 5 huge stone pillars that were as tall as the clouds descended from the sky, piercing straight into the sea of coffee. If he didn't know that these were his 5 fingers, he really had the urge to run over and carve the words, "Qin Wukong was here" on them. Although he didn't know what kind of world in a cup this was, he still felt a little melancholic. If he had known earlier, he would have gotten some freshly ground top-grade Blue Mountain coffee beans. He might have to deal with the sea of coffee in front of him for a long time. The taste of instant coffee was very easy to get tired of, and it was a little unworthy of his current status. Qin Guang held onto the stone pillar. Unable to wait for the Heavenly Holy Grail's electronic notification, he could only shout at the top of his lungs, "Lord Azure, what kind of world in a cup is this? I'm already here, give me a hint." When he asked this, he was very unconfident. He was especially afraid that it was really the strongest rod drawing technique in history. Wouldn't that overlap with the pile driver skill? It was already bad enough that he became the strongest pile driver. If he learned the rod drawing technique, it would be even more powerful than the drawing technique. Wouldn't he fall as soon as he took it out? What could he do in the future? "I'll hold my knife and laugh at the sky." Flowers can only be plucked? Azure's voice rang out in the void. Congratulations. Qin Guang's face was ashen. It's over. It's the world of photocatalysis that you wanted. No, to be precise, you've hit the jackpot this time. You've got a chance to increase your money. Qin Guang clenched his fist. Yes. As long as it wasn't the rod drawing technique. Then he asked again, what do you mean? Increase my money? It's like when you buy a car. The beggar version has a manual transmission. Add money for the sunroof, then add money for the automatic transmission. What you've got this time is a one-line Sky Realm laboratory world in a cup. Of course, because what you wanted the most before today was to solve your broken factory's photocatalysis problem. This time, this world in a cup can only be the research and development of photocatalysis as the first business. Qin Guang figured out a few key points from Azure's words. Add money. Laboratory world in a cup. For now. Research and development. It seemed that there was a big story behind this. This world in a cup had changed. Although he didn't know what the meaning behind it was, Qin Guang subconsciously felt that he must be a glorious member of the Add Money party. After all, there was a saying that went, put $3,000 into your card and take home the four-way Titan. But Azure clicked her tongue. You're really lucky. It seems that this world in a cup has been accumulated for too long. Although the total energy supply of the Holy Grail has not changed, the Holy Grail has further optimized the energy distribution method through its own calculation. Although this world in a cup is still in the one-line Sky Realm, it already has some higher-level characteristics. Chapter 1039. Ever since he came to Tongshan Industrial Factory, Qin Guang hasn't encountered anything good, and he's been plagued with bad luck. He was exhausted to the point that he had to give it his all before he managed to turn misfortune into fortune. Now he finally heard some rare good news. Qin Guang, half of his body in the coffee soup, clenched his fist. Don't say any more, I'll add more money, okay? How much? 200 million? Azure spat at him. You're dreaming, I want faith points. Faith points. Qin Guang shrugged. Well, I know I want faith points, I just want to save as much as I can, right? Bah. Listen, you only have 5 minutes to think about it. To be specific, due to some inexplicable special reasons, you were lucky enough to obtain a special laboratory-type world in a cup this time. If you can successfully complete the task, you will be able to obtain several photocatalyst synthesis formulas that can solve your current situation and solve your urgent problems. Qin Guang nodded. I understand, it's the kind of super powerful photocatalyst that after you put it in the water it's done with a bayou sound, right? There's no need for a large amount of ultraviolet and infrared radiation, right? Of course. The product of the heavenly Holy Grail must be flawless. At most, it only needs sunlight to achieve the effect. Okay, I understand. Then if you choose to invest faith points now after completing the task, this world in a cup will continue to be open to you and you can enter at any time. Hearing those words, Qin Guang came to a realization. That means that I have a laboratory in the Holy Grail? Azure. Yes, but every time you enter you have to consume faith points because it is not like the Sea of Time in the realm of True Martial. The world structure is very incomplete and cannot exist on its own. When you are not inside, the heavenly Holy Grail will freeze it just like a computer on standby. This will also consume faith points, but it will be maintained at a relatively low level. But once you enter, the cup world in the laboratory will begin to operate, and the Holy Grail will need to continuously consume energy to maintain the integrity of its structure. Whether it's maintaining the dimensional barrier to resist the invasion of the spacetime turbulence, or constructing the laws and maintaining the stability of the matter within, or even maintaining the physical body that your soul has reconstructed, all of these require energy. Qin Guang, who was listening attentively, continued to nod. I understand. It's just like how a computer consumes more electricity after it's turned on. Liuli humphed. It's good that you understand. Apart from that, the amount of faith you consume when you enter the laboratory and when you command the laboratory staff to conduct research is different. Qin Guang nodded again. I understand. It's just like when I turn on my computer and only read web pages, the power consumption is different from when I use my computer to play games. The sound of Luli snapping her fingers came from the void. Bingo, you're worth teaching. By the way, I have another question. You said that photocatalysis is the primary business for the time being. Can you let this laboratory continue to help me develop other things in the future? Which ones are they? Also, what about the specific power consumption? Lily gave him a very straightforward answer. I don't know. Huh. I don't know what it can be developed specifically. I don't know anything about power consumption either. Qin Guang glared. But you were acting like everything was under your control just now. What I said just now is what I know. Of course, I have everything under control. Is there a problem? Why? Are you giving up? I can only give you a general guess. Just like the laboratory in your school, it can only do this thing and develop this thing. If you want the laboratory to be able to develop something else, do you have to buy new equipment? Do you have to hire more researchers? Or do you have to let your researchers study abroad? Do you have to spend money to buy materials for research? Isn't that an expense? Qin Guang was speechless. That's right. I understand. Then it's settled. Anyway, whatever you want to develop in the future, spend money to buy it. Expand your laboratory, expand your functions. In any case, you just have to keep paying faith. Aren't you going to use it now? You have to understand that this is a rare gift from the Holy Grail. In my opinion, your laboratory has great potential. In the future, it can even be used to create new life, explore the true meaning of the lowest level of divine power, and analyze and deduce the essence of the divine spark. Photocatalyst is just a drop in the ocean in front of the sea of stars. Hearing such a high-end function, Qin Guang was drooling. I'd stop talking. I don't care how much faith this thing will burn in the future. In any case, I'll buy it. Just give me a number. How much faith should I invest now? Qin Guang decided to make the final decision. He thought to himself, I have more than 20 million faith points now. So what if I'm generous? I'm a millionaire with more than 400,000 faith points every day. I've worked so hard to create so many statues in the past. I can finally put them to good use. More importantly, this is a one-time investment with long-term benefits. The upper limit is higher. It's more reliable than simply spending faith points to exchange for the one-line heavenly grail. Ding dong. Just as Qin Guang was thinking about this, an electronic voice in the style of the Holy Grail sounded in his head. Congratulations to Redeemer Qin Guang for successfully customizing Nicosia's laboratory. Current debt amount: 1,466,652,837. Please pay it off within 2 years. Otherwise you will be obliterated. What a scam. The same roar came from Qin Guang and Azure's mouths. I must have seen a ghost. What the hell is 1 billion? Pay it off in 2 years? I've calculated with my fingers. Right now I can produce 400,000 a day. It'll take at least 10 years, okay? Not to mention the expenses in the future. I'm done for. In addition, what saddened Qin Guang the most was not the despairing number, but the fact that Azure was also complaining about being scammed. Lord Azure, what do you mean by this? You've been trying all sorts of ways to entice me to invest, but you don't even know how much the down payment is. You're definitely the best scammer investment consultant in history, okay? Qin Guang, I didn't expect that either. After you said buy, I thought that since I was going to buy it anyway, it wouldn't be too exaggerated, so I casually clicked confirm for you. I really didn't expect that. Even someone as thick-skinned as Azure knew that she had gone overboard this time. It was very awkward. Qin Guang silently looked up at the sky, calculating his current divine statue and faith production capacity. There was no need to think about the future. Based on the current situation, if he wanted to survive, he would have to increase his faith production capacity by at least 5 times. There was no hope at all. This was not a drill. He was really going to be obliterated. Azure, I've often reflected on myself in the past. I always felt that as the son of destiny, the old man was a little too disrespectful to you as a cheat. I also knew that this wasn't good. But now I finally understand that the problem really isn't all on me. I want to respect you more, but I can't do it. How could you be so scammer? Can you imagine how I'm feeling now? It's like going bankrupt and buying the growth enterprise market. Then it will drop to the limit and be suspended at any moment. Then I'll be trapped at any moment, okay? Anyway, I have something to do at home, so I'll take my leave first. Lioli awkwardly left a message before falling completely silent. Qin Guang knew that she would be like this. It was really hard to scold her. Forget it, anyway, it wasn't the first time he had been scammed by her. He'd just deal with it when it came. He couldn't possibly die from holding in his piss, right? He placed his left hand on a stone pillar, scooped up a cup of coffee with his right hand, and poured some into his mouth. The instant Nescafé coffee suddenly became especially bitter. Suddenly, the place where his left hand was propping up was empty, and his entire body tilted to the side. The next moment he fell into a stone door that appeared out of nowhere. Qin Guang looked up and saw a huge brightly lit stone room further inside. There was a sign hanging on the door. Laboratory Cup World Middle Finger Project Team. There was a familiar figure standing under the sign. It was the sexy and hot female teacher Xianxia Tepester, who he used to forcefully study the world of environmental impact assessment and environmental politics. She was holding a small banner in her hand. A warm welcome to the laboratory's investor, Qin Guang, for an inspection. At the same time, the electronic voice of the heavenly Holy Grail in Qin Guang's mind sounded again. The Redeemer has entered the laboratory. The mission is about to begin. The blonde, blue-eyed, and wavy Xianxia swayed her butt and walked forward with a smile. Yo, hello. Qin Guang stood up and blinked. Teacher Xianxia? The big-breasted blonde girl nodded. That's me. This time Qin Guang could not help but be shocked. Not only was this Xianxia really alive, but she could also retain her previous memories. Xianxia herself was also very surprised. She was originally floating alone in an unknown space, quite pitiful and depressed. If it were not for the fact that she was a Frankenstein who could deduce all kinds of strange things in her mind as long as she could think, and the immortality that Liuli threw to her as bait and goal, she would have collapsed long ago. In short, her desire to regain her body was still very strong. Last time when Qin Guang was studying environmental impact assessment and environmental politics, she temporarily regained her physical body. Although her actions and words were completely controlled, she was still moved to tears. Later, Qin Guang opened the cup world again to learn martial arts. Unfortunately, the scale of the so-called realm of true martial was too large. Xianxia's soul, as a substitute for Liuli, was completely shattered. She unconsciously turned into more than 400,000 martial arts books, which were then learned by Qin Guang. When she came back to her senses, she was floating in the void again as a wandering ghost. Then everything returned to silence. She thought that she would have to wait for many years to regain her physical body again. But now she suddenly regained her physical body again without any feeling of being bound. She could move freely, speak, think clearly, and retain her memories. How could she not be happy? Qin Guang tentatively walked in front of her and pinched her face. Chapter 1040. Nicole slapped Qin Guang's hand away. What are you doing? Qin Guang smirked. I want to see if you're a living person. Nicole's big blue eyes rolled back. Show some respect to your lab director. Of course. Qin Guang looked at this girl up and down. Although he had not interacted much with her, Qin Guang already knew how amazing she was when she blew herself up. Although she was not very stable, she was able to pull out an electromagnetic railgun in this era. She was also related to the Frankenstein Tesla. She was definitely not an ordinary person. The first stage of the mission begins. Basic knowledge of photocatalysis. If you fail, you will die. Qin Guang was planning to get closer to his special employee and chat about her experiences as a descendant of a self-destructing family when the electronic voice of the Heavenly Grail rang out at an untimely time. Nicole apparently received the notification as well. She pulled Qin Guang and walked inside. The two of them passed through the door of the stone room and saw an environment that Qin Guang was very familiar with. A high school classroom. Nicole pressed Qin Guang down on the chair and turned back to the podium. She picked up the teaching stick and knocked on the blackboard. Student Qin Guang, please put away your perverted gaze. Don't look at the teacher's career line. Open the textbook in front of you. We will start from the first chapter of Modern Basic Materials Science. Qin Guang was very unhappy. He felt that something was wrong. For the sake of this laboratory, he had incurred a debt that he could not pay back. Shouldn't he just wave his hand and shout, "We will research and develop whatever we want," and Nicole will immediately go back to work and push the research and development progress bit by bit? It was just like when he used to click on the technology tree when he played StarCraft. Once he clicked on it, all he had to do was wait for the results to arrive. But he did not have time to complain. While he was complaining, the ceiling fan above his head suddenly fell and slammed down heavily, cutting his head. Punishment mechanism for absent-mindedness in class triggered. 1 accidental death. Remaining death count, 8. When he came back to his senses, he was standing at the entrance of the laboratory again. Nicole was looking at him with a pained expression. Can you be serious? Don't joke around. People will die. Old Master Guang didn't even want to complain anymore. What the hell was this laboratory? To think that it could even suppress his inner strength and the power of a soy explosive. Also, he was only distracted for a moment. There was no need to kill him on the spot, right? Also, wouldn't it be a little too crazy to only have a total of 9 resurrections? Unfortunately, the heavenly Holy Grail would never reason with him. While he was complaining, Nicole hit him hard on the shoulder with her pointer. You're still daydreaming. Qin Guang sighed. Fine, I admit defeat. After who knows how many years, Qin Guang finally managed to learn basic materials science, physical chemistry, modern physics, and all the other subjects related to photocatalysts and successfully completed the first stage. He had died once and he had died for nothing. The second phase of the mission begins. Become a qualified researcher and master the operation of all the instruments. After many years, he finally mastered the operation of all the high-end experimental instruments simulated by the heavenly Holy Grail. This time he didn't fail. The third phase of the mission begins. Quietly wait for Nicole to complete the research and development of the 5 types of photocatalysis. If the research and development fails, you will die. Qin Guang finally broke down. Damn it. If the third phase is for me to wait, then what's the point of the first 2 phases? Besides, she's the one who failed the research and development. Why should I die? He had a feeling that the heavenly Holy Grail was deliberately causing trouble. Bored to death, Qin Guang crossed his legs and sat in the laboratory like a stone Buddha. Soon he realized how powerful his laboratory director was. Because in this huge laboratory, Nicole was the only one who had no subordinates. She was the director, but there was no one who was willing to be her subordinate. She moved left and right, constantly manipulating the instruments or throwing in the materials herself. In between, she wrote and calculated. She used the tireless body provided by the realm in the cup to its limit. In her dictionary there seemed to be no rest, only work. She kept trying, burning batch after batch of materials that appeared out of thin air in exchange for faith points. She looked as if she was always in a state of extreme excitement. It was a stark contrast to Qin Guang, who was bored to death in the laboratory. He could have helped, but every time he approached the instruments he would be blocked by Nicole. Qin Guang roughly understood. Perhaps according to the settings of the heavenly Holy Grail, he should have become Nicole's assistant, or even an experimental partner, to complete the final step together. However, the Holy Grail saw through his nature and knew that he had no chance of interfering. That was why it changed the name of the third phase of the mission at the last minute. Forget it. Although it's boring, I have a mental blockade. I won't collapse. Qin Guang slumped on the chair in a standard Beijing style. His eyes were lifeless as he pondered the profound philosophy of life. Who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? Why was I born into this world? What is the meaning of my existence? Why did I become the master of the heavenly Holy Grail? Where is my final destination? Will I be able to survive until I complete the 3,000 worlds and rescue Lioli? What kind of existence will I be after I complete it? Also, what is God? What is the meaning of God's existence? The power of faith, the power of the Holy Grail, the power of elements, the power of destiny, inner strength. What is the inevitable and accidental connection between these strange powers? What is the edge of the universe? Is time like a straight line with a starting point and an end? Alright, it's done. It's done. Qin Guang's mind was running wild, galloping for thousands of miles. He had no idea how much time had passed when Nicole slapped a thick printed document on his face. Qin Guang picked up the book and looked at it. There was a line of large words on it. Synthesis and preparation methods of 5 photocatalysts. Slam. Can't you give it a more domineering title? Do you have to be so lazy? Nicole grabbed the book. 2 minutes later she changed the first page and brought it back. 365 ultimate techniques for synthesis and preparation of 5 types of photocatalysts that can defy the heavens as long as they're thrown into water. A particularly cool name requested by the investor. Qin Guang was barely satisfied. That's more like it. Do you have a finished product? Yes. Nicole turned around and threw a spoon. This spoon was so shiny that it could reflect a person's reflection. When he put it in front of his eyes, it looked like a big doll. I can't believe I'm so handsome. Qin Guang, whose mind had been open for too long, had become a little retarded, mumbled to himself as he walked out of the laboratory and headed straight for the sea of coffee outside. He squatted down and put the spoon into the sea of coffee. In the blink of an eye, with the spot where the spoon entered the water as the center, the coffee color quickly dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. The speed was not much slower than the ripples caused by throwing a stone into the water. The most important thing was that the sea of coffee that had become clear looked no different from pure water. It was only when it was 50 to 60 meters away that the coffee color in the distance continued to spread over that it stopped slightly. Qin Guang was shocked. Amazing. Nicole stood behind him. Of course, this is my blood, sweat, and tears. There are also ones that specifically target heavy metals, some that specifically break macromolecular chains, and some that specifically target antibiotics. In short, after you go out, follow these categories and collect the sewage outside first. Then prepare these photocatalysts and put them in. That's it. How about it, my investor? Are you satisfied? Qin Guang nodded. I'm satisfied. At the same time, an electronic notification sounded in his heart. Congratulations, Redeemer. The laboratory cup world assessment has been completed. Seeing that he was about to leave, Nicole hurriedly said, Then boss, can you invest some more faith points to buy more equipment? There's still a lot of research we can do. Those philosophical, metaphysical, basic subjects and physics problems that you were thinking about just now, we can research them all as long as you're willing to invest faith points. Qin Guang hurriedly jumped and rushed straight into the spacetime tunnel. Like how I'll believe you. I still owe more than 1 billion faith points. There won't be a next year if I live past this year and you still want me to invest faith points? Do you want me to die? When Qin Guang's figure completely disappeared, Nicole stomped her feet unwillingly. She turned back to look at the Middle Finger Project team's laboratory and muttered to herself, Sigh, what a pity. This short-sighted stingy boss only used the middle finger when he had 5 fingers. Do you know what I just discovered? As Nicole spoke, endless frost came from afar and quickly completely froze her and the laboratory behind her. Before the consciousness in her mind completely fell silent, Nicole was still muttering in her heart. Through studying the structural changes of photocatalysts, I even discovered the mystery of forging a world. As long as you give me enough time and investment, I can see through the mystery of plane creation. I can also find the truth of divine power. In addition, Qin Guang used faith points to directly exchange for knowledge, which felt really good. In fact, before this, Nicole didn't know much about photocatalysts, but the setting of the heavenly Holy Grail was like this. As Qin Guang's mentor in the world in the cup, she was set to be the top master of photocatalysts in history from the very beginning. It didn't matter if she didn't understand it at first. The heavenly Holy Grail wanted you to understand it. Even if you didn't understand it, you would understand it. When she was still alive, Nicole often lamented how short human life was, while the sea of knowledge was endless. Now that she experienced the force-feeding knowledge of the heavenly Holy Grail, she was simply intoxicated. Unfortunately, this boss, Qin Guang, was too stingy and not generous enough. The light rotated and Qin Guang appeared in Cloud City, but he was already empty-handed. He didn't bring out the 365 styles that Nicole threw to him before, and that super awesome spoon wasn't in his hand either. But it didn't matter, the formula had been forcibly stuffed into his brain. Although he didn't really participate in the research and development process, fortunately, because of the basic knowledge he learned in the first and second stages, since the formula was already in his hand, as long as he could get the raw materials and the necessary equipment for synthesis, he could make it. How is it? This laboratory is awesome, right? Liuli smiled and moved in front of him, looking like she was asking for credit. Qin Guang really wanted to hit her, but he felt that he couldn't beat her. That was a crazy 1 billion. He always felt that he could already see his incomparably miserable death 2 years later. He sighed. Sigh, if I really die one day and you're locked in here forever, don't blame me, the savior, for not being helpful. You have to blame yourself for being too much of a pit. You have to reflect on your godly life. Once there was a cute savior in front of you, but you didn't cherish him. You weren't gentle to him nor considerate, and you always tricked him. When he died, it was too late for you to regret, but it's useless to regret. This is the most deceptive God Emperor in the world. If God can give you another chance to start over, please treat his successor well. You have to at least say 3 words to his successor, "You're so handsome." If you want to add a time limit to this handsome, it's best to add 100 million years. He muttered with a face full of vicissitudes, and even Liuli couldn't bear to see him. When Qin Guang finally disappeared, Lu Ming said tentatively, "Sister Lioli, you really tricked him this time, didn't you?" Lioli's face turned green and white. "Don't worry, it's okay. When the boat comes to the bridgehead it will straighten out." "You want him to pray for himself again?" Lioli shrugged. "What else can I do? Things have come to this, what can I do?" Chapter 1041. Qin Guang, what's wrong with you? Why are you spacing out? Come back. After Qin Guang left the world in the cup, he felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what it was. He subconsciously spaced out and then woke Hua Ling up. "No, nothing." With a stiff smile on his face, Qin Guang waved his hand and stood up. At the same time, he took out the photocatalyst stick that fell into the cup and handed it to Hua Ling. Hua Ling and Zhong Yu saw his strange expression and thought that he was annoyed with his hair. Only then did they realize that they might have gone too far. "Sorry, I couldn't control myself for a moment," Hua Ling said with a slight shyness. Qin Guang waved his hand. No, that's not the problem. I was thinking about something else. I just suddenly had some incredible ideas in my mind. Forget it, you'll know later. I'll go back to the office first." It could be considered as paving the way for him to come out with a new photocatalyst formula in the future. Although it would definitely scare a bunch of people, especially professionals like Hua Ling and Zhong Yu, Qin Guang couldn't be bothered with shocking the world. Geniuses didn't need to explain to people. Just like the Tesla coil that no one could replicate now, but he had done it 100 years ago. You ask why he could do it? Why couldn't others? Very simple, because I am Tesla. You ask me where I have so much time to do research? Let me tell you, above our three-dimensional world, there is actually a four-dimensional world. I found the vortex point of the four-dimensional time dimension. I have been thinking and working in the four-dimensional parallel time for hundreds of years, so I took out the Tesla coil. I can create ball-shaped lightning. Are you convinced? Anyway, the photocatalyst formula I took out is invincible. It is unprecedented in this world, and it has never existed in this world before. I took it out and put it in front of you. What do you want? Hit me. You have to be convinced. Qin Guang even thought of a theoretical routine to explain. At this time, what he really couldn't let go of was another thing. There seemed to be something wrong with the number of his faith points. He counted on his fingers and thought to himself, the old man is a new era university student from the key universities of 211 and 985. He should be able to pass math, and simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division should be no problem for him. Ever since he no longer had any need for it, he didn't particularly mind the production of faith points. It had been a long time since he deliberately calculated and paid attention to it. Before starting work this time, he had roughly looked at the total amount and felt that 20 million was a lot. It was very cool and awesome. It was definitely enough. That was enough. But now he was inexplicably burdened with a debt of more than 1.46 billion yuan. He would ascend to heaven in 2 years, but his daily production was only about 400,000 yuan. Seeing that he was not far from death, he finally realized that something was wrong. His previous 8 great heavenly spirit seeing cups intermediate realm deity statues, the production capacity of the transient sea and the true martial realm, as well as the production capacity of the 2 fanatics Xue Lin and Chu Zijin, totaled up to 400,000. But what about the statue of the old man's master of languages, the world in the cup of light? If he remembered correctly, the production capacity of a single one-line heavens realm deity statue should be more than 500,000 yuan. Then his current daily production of faith points should be steadily close to 1 million yuan. When he paid for the intermediate realm in the laboratory, he should have more than 50 million yuan of faith points in his savings. Although the debt was still as high as 1.44 billion yuan, at least the production capacity had increased. If the daily production capacity was close to 1 million yuan, he should be able to pay it off in 5 years. The pressure wouldn't be so great and he wouldn't be completely unable to see any hope of survival. But now the numbers were not right. Something was very wrong. Walking out of the laboratory, Qin Guang entered the world in the cup again. He didn't see Lioli and he didn't know where she was hiding. She probably felt that she was too much of a scam and felt guilty about what he said. She didn't have the face to see anyone, so she ran into the leaves of the deer cry fruit and hid. Forget it, thinking about how Lioli would drag her down with all her shit and pee. Ah pooey. He had clearly been scamming her all the way until now. It was time to teach her a lesson and let her understand that as a deity, she couldn't scam the main character too much. Qin Guang deliberately ran to the light ball of the deity statue in the language master's cup. reached his hand in and communicated with the Holy Grail to calculate the production capacity of faith points. After a while he scratched his head. Strange, it was a daily production capacity of 930,000. Then what was going on before? Qin Guang shouted in the direction of the deer cry fruit. Lily, there was a problem with my previous production capacity of faith points. There was no sound and everything was silent. The empty cloud city was desolate. Lily, where is she? Come out. Still no one. Qin Guang flew up and landed under the deer cry fruit. Deer cry, where is Lioli? The deer cry fruit coughed lightly. She went home. Who are you lying to? Isn't that a humanoid mummy wrapped in those leaves of yours? It's nothing, it just looks a little like a human. Lu Ming said these words very calmly. Qin Guang finally understood. It's hard to guard against a thief in the house. Lioli must have come up with some unorthodox method to secretly consume his faith points. That's right, her milk bath from before. That milky white bath water. Although it was sweet like pure milk in the mouth, the taste was a little too good. Now that he thought about it carefully, it was all suspicious. What a beast. This prodigal woman used the faith points that I worked so hard to earn as bath water. Then she must have absorbed the energy of the power of faith from the bath water and used it to moisturize her delicate skin. No wonder her skin looked so white, so tender and so alluring. First she acted like a thief and stole my faith points to use as bath water. Then she pressed confirm on one of her hands, turning me from a wealthy person into a cup slave with a debt of 1.46 billion. This wastrel really has no bottom line. She refreshes her own bottom line time and time again. Morals were corrupted and public morals were deteriorating day by day. As a god you can't be so shameless. No wonder she was finally embarrassed to hide this time. Doing such a thing even a thick-skinned person like me would be ashamed to death. Qin Guang almost fainted from anger. Then he stomped on the ground and flew up like lightning. He slapped heavily on the buttocks of the humanoid mummy wrapped in the leaves of deer cry fruit. Pa! Lioli's scream came from inside. Qin Guang. You're courting death. Qin Guang was still angry and wasn't afraid of her. Who told you to pretend you're not here? You still have the face to talk to me? Do you think it's easy for me to accumulate faith points? I was defeated by you just like that. Are you still human? I'm not human, I'm a god. You. Qin Guang was angered to the point that smoke was coming out from his 7 orifices. Rage surged in his heart and he threw another slap. This time he even used his special ability, causing a huge explosion that echoed throughout the entire city. Qin Guang. You can't blame me for this. The heavenly Holy Grail is leaking the power of the Holy Grail. Your power of faith is also leaking everywhere in Cloud City from the statue. You threw the Holy Grail into the sewage. So smelly. What's wrong with this emperor taking a milk bath? Deer Cry, let me out, I'm going to beat him to death. Deer Cry didn't feel it at all. He just shook the fruit and whistled, looking fearless. It seemed like Deer Cry was on the same side as Qin Guang this time. Lily caused the heavens to be angry and the people to resent her. She was unpopular. Qin Guang had an accomplice in his hands, so he was even more unscrupulous. His big palm was only aimed at the same position of Lioli's buttocks through the leaves. I want to ask you, do you really want me to save you? What are you thinking in your head? What if you really kill me? Who asked you to squander? Who asked you to squander again? Pa. After being tortured by Lioli to his heart's content, Qin Guang finally had a rare chance to turn things around. He only hit her to his heart's content. Finally, when the furious Lioli was about to break free from the leaves, Qin Guang said, "Don't say anything. Anyway, from now on don't touch my faith anymore. Otherwise if I really die we'll all die together." Then he left the world in the cup, leaving only Lioli's various roars. After coming out, Qin Guang ran to his office and began to calculate the accounts. He summarized the statue of God that he currently had, as well as the situation of the world in the cup that he had completed and had the opportunity to set up a statue of God. If he could successfully erect a statue of the heavenly line God in the acting world, as well as a statue of the perfect physical body obtained from the previous intensive training and the heavenly line God realm training in the leg muscle group, he would be able to break through the 2 million daily production mark. As long as he didn't let the thieves cause trouble again, he would be able to pay off the huge loan of more than 1.46 billion in 2 years. As for the world of Nicosia's laboratory, then don't think about the statue of God. Obviously, the world in the cup in the laboratory did not have this function. Thinking of this, Qin Guang breathed a long sigh of relief. Damn it, he finally saw the hope of survival. But he was also very anxious. The calculation just now was that he would have to erect 2 more statues of God in the line tomorrow to just balance the income. Now, 1 more day of delay, the production would be a little less, and the hope of survival would be a little less when the 2-year period was up. Although the Holy Grail only said a simple sentence, "Otherwise you will be obliterated," which sounded very understated. But Qin Guang really didn't dare to bet on whether the Holy Grail was joking or not. The voice of this cup sounded even more rigid than the German's. He walked back and forth in the office repeatedly, pinching his fingers to count the time. No, I must find a way to improve efficiency. I can't waste any more time. I must get out of the Tangshan industrial factory as soon as possible, and then quickly find a way to get the statue of God to get faith. In order to survive, I must get myself back to fighting state. As for the changes in the world, those strange mutated creatures, and the power of the Holy Grail and the elemental power in the outside world? Sorry, the old man is like a clay bodhisattva crossing the river. He can't even protect himself. Let me solve my own urgent needs first and then think about the important task of saving the world. I can't do anything anyway, I can only take 1 step at a time. Qin Guang calculated in his heart and strode out the door. Old Gua, come here. 10 minutes later, Guoming looked at Qin Guang with a puzzled face. Isn't this a little too rushed? Qin Guang waved his hand. There's no rush. Since we have a ready-made space, we can start building now. Chapter 1042. Guoming argued. But even if we want to classify and pre-treat, we can't just build a few pools for classification and collection, right? Sooner or later it has to be mixed together. It doesn't make any sense. According to the plan that the expert group once gave us, it should be that each special wastewater must have a complete set of pre-treatment process, which includes chemical, physical, and biochemical means, and involves the cultivation of specific bacteria. For example, the water from the pharmaceutical factory containing antibiotics can only be detoxified through specific bacteria. Another example is the heavy metal wastewater, which is insoluble after the formation of sulfate. We have to add sulfuric acid first and then chlorate is insoluble. In the next stage we add hydrochloric acid and then there is a whole process of prebiochemical process. At present we have 5 kinds of the most difficult wastewater to treat in our factory, so we have to build 5 smaller, but complete and highly technical small and medium sewage treatment stations for these 5 kinds of wastewater. First, through these 5 small sewage treatment stations, the 5 kinds of ultra-difficult wastewater with the most difficult problems will complete a whole set of pre-treatment processes, and then enter the overall treatment section and combine with other easily biochemical and easily treatable wastewater for treatment. The initial construction cost of Tangshan Industrial Plant was only 150 million yuan. It was because of the lack of this most critical step that later more than a dozen technical changes failed to achieve the effect, and now we can only rebuild it. Under the premise of complete reconstruction, considering that 5 small treatment stations and a large comprehensive station must be built, the total cost of reconstruction will be as high as 400 million yuan. What's the use of investing 20 million yuan to build 5 single ponds side by side now? Isn't this a waste of money? Although Qin Guang said that even if Lu Chemical doesn't participate in your sole proprietorship, you will rebuild it, I still think we should plan before we act. Don't act too hastily. Guoming argued. However, Qin Guang didn't want to listen to his seemingly reasonable, but actually useless theory. Comrade Gui, you are just immortal. You will never understand the realm of God. How can I tell you that as soon as the 5 ponds are repaired, the old man will take out the photocatalyst from his crotch and throw it in? The super complicated set of processes you said will be done in minutes. An investment of 400 million renminbi isn't even as useful as a photocatalyst, okay? Of course, if Qin Guang directly told Guoming that he already had 5 unprecedented photocatalyst formulas, and as long as he took out the finished products, all the ultra-difficult wastewater in their factory would be solved, Guoming would definitely call the mental hospital and ask someone to tie Qin Guang up. Elder Gua, say no more. I've made up my mind. You just need to carry it out. My requirements are as follows. Bring out the design within 3 days, start the ground within a week, complete the main construction within 20 days and complete everything within a month. I'll arrange for someone to transfer the money to the company's account right away. You go and find someone right away. The structure of these pools was not complicated. All of them were poured on the spot. In short, the faster the better. Of course, the quality must be guaranteed as well. You can find the construction company now. If the construction company says that we are in too much of a hurry, then we will increase the price. Pile more people on top. Qin Guang looked at Guoming calmly and said so. Guoming, who was in the middle of a long speech, was suddenly speechless. He stared at Qin Guang, but his eyes were clear, his eyes were bright, and his expression was normal. He was really not joking. Qin Guang patted his shoulder again. Anyway, Elder Gui, you have to work hard first. Just think of it as doing it for Tangshan factory. There are some things that I can't tell you for now, but when you fix the ponds I will give you a big surprise. After saying that, Qin Guang turned and walked out of the office, leaving only an inexplicably domineering and handsome back. Guoming stared at his back blankly, but he silently remembered something in his mind. When the review team came, he thought that the floating mud on the water would definitely be destroyed. But in the end, the mud inexplicably sank and hardened at the bottom of the water for 7 days, until the review team left. When the review team left, the mud popped up again. It looked like it was going to destroy the pot again, but inexplicably turned into bricks and floated on the water. Guoming didn't believe that Qin Guang was not behind this. Could it be that he had some new ideas this time? Guoming clenched his fist tightly. Must be like this. In short, it was right to believe in him. After leaving Tangshan factory, Qin Guang returned to the hotel, opened the web page and sat on the chair in a daze. He racked his brain like crazy thinking about the world of acting and the perfect body of a god. An extremely strong desire to survive forced him to move forward, and he couldn't breathe. The post-production of Women had been completed, and now it was just waiting for the release. At first, Qin Guang's goal was only the box office. He didn't really expect to rely on only one movie to make the whole world recognize his acting skills. As the saying goes, there is no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. Acting skills were extremely difficult to quantify. It was easy to convince some people, but it was not easy to convince the whole world and get public and comprehensive recognition. According to his original plan, he planned to make a name for himself with Women and the play Thunderstorm that he had acted in before, and then make a movie specifically for the Oscars. The Oscars was the most recognized performing arts award in the world, but it was just a game for Americans. Chinese actors were born to be inferior to others in this kind of award evaluation. Therefore, Qin Guang had even planned to keep fighting. If one movie couldn't make it, then he would make 2 or 3 movies. He would find the best director, write the best script, shoot the best movie, and learn from Li Zi, who had accompanied him for 20 years. With his own world-class acting skills as a foundation, he could always make it to the top slowly. But now there was no time. God knew what the next Line Sky Cup would be like, so he had to seize every opportunity in front of him. Therefore, Qin Guang decided to use Women to fight for the Oscars. But he didn't understand the film industry and he didn't know how to operate it, so he could only find Big Beard Deng. What? You want to compete for the Oscars? You're not kidding me, are you? On the other end of the phone, Big Beard Deng thought that he had heard wrongly, or that Qin Guang had gone crazy. Qin Guang said heavily into the phone, "Uncle, I'm not kidding. Tell me, is my acting skills the best you've ever seen?" Big Beard Deng was stunned for a moment. Although he felt that Qin Guang's idea and statement were crazy, he didn't seem to be arrogant during the filming. His acting skills had indeed surpassed the level of impeccable and entered a new stage. His strength lay not only in his own acting skills, but also in his ability to make the actors who acted with him, and even the environment in the whole scene, be infected and influenced by him. Qin Guang's acting skills were indeed ahead of the times. Give him an Oscars, reasonable and convincing. But the selection of the Oscars was not just about an actor's acting skills. There were many things involved. The level of the film itself, the influence and reputation of the film, the influence of the film on a global scale, and the reputation that the actor accumulated step by step, and even the preferences and relationships of the judges, and even the mood of the judges when they voted and made a decision, were all external factors that could affect the final result. In addition, Big Beard Deng was not belittling himself. Although Women was a good film, and Qin Guang's performance was impeccable, the whole film was a commercial film tailor-made for Jiang Yage. The plot and concept were not at the level of the Oscars at all. In addition, Qin Guang acted well, But there were always many scenes in which he did not participate in himself. The performance of other actors with and without him could be said to be a world of difference. It was intolerable that there were such obvious shortcomings in a film that was nominated for the Oscars. Big Beard even had a rare feeling of inferiority. I dragged Qin Guang down. If Qin Guang had acted in The Revenant or Manchester by the Sea, the Oscars would have been his. Well, Qin Guang, I admit that you are the best actor in the world, but it's useless. I'm not an Oscar judge. And isn't our film a little too weak? How about I help you contact Lee Anchuan, Spielberg or Cameron? Let's do the next one. Big Beard Deng really did not want to admit his failure. However, Qin Guang immediately rejected the idea. He knew those directors and it would take at least 3 to 5 years for a film to be released. At that time his coffin would be filled with evergreens. No, just women. Big Beard Deng sighed. Alas, but your idea is not realistic. The film itself is just a very ordinary commercial film. I'm afraid it's not even at the level of being nominated for the Oscars, let alone winning the Oscars. In addition, we have no overseas distribution plans for the time being. Films that have not been screened in commercial cinemas in Los Angeles are not eligible for the Oscars. Is that so? Qin Guang could not hide his disappointment. Big Beard Deng intended to completely dispel his crazy idea. So, let's do it next time? Unexpectedly, Qin Guang searched on the internet and said, "It's okay. There are still 2 weeks before December 31st. I'll contact Tang Xiaokai of the Tang Jie Foundation to help. He has a lot of connections in the United States. We'll try to find a cinema in Los Angeles next week before December 31st. Big Beard Deng. Oh, by the way, we still need cinemas in other places. It's okay. I have a friend in Detroit called Bona Pierce. He's a director of the American Boxing Association. He also has a lot of connections. Find a cinema in Detroit to show it to." Big Beard Deng. Then I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you for the rest of the matter, uncle. You can use your connections or spend money. No matter what, you must help me submit the name list within January. You must pay attention to this matter. It's very urgent and crucial. Big Beard Deng felt that he was breaking down a little. Do you even understand what an Oscar is? Do you think it's cabbages on the street that you can randomly stuff in and win an award? Then it's settled. Qin Guang did as he said. Without waiting for Big Beard to break down, he immediately hung up and began to contact Tang Xiaokai. His fighting spirit was super strong. As for how to achieve the statue of a god with a perfect body, he did not have any good ideas at the moment. He definitely could not organize a fighting competition. He had internal force. Even if he sealed his skills, he would still be questioned by the industry insiders. They would think that he was bullying people with internal force. On the other end, Big Beard Deng was holding his phone in a daze. His mind was still buzzing. Does he mean that I made a commercial film with male idols but I'm going to compete for an Oscar? Why do I feel that this is so sci-fi? Director Deng, what's wrong? Yang Shi, who was next to him, leaned over. Big Beard Deng looked at Yang Shi with a pair of dead fish eyes. Qin Guang said that he wants to win an Oscar with women. Yang Shi, F***CK. Chapter 1043. Every country had its own film censorship system. From the time a film was reported to the time it was approved, to the time it was scheduled in the commercial cinemas, it usually took a few months or a few years. The situation in China was more complicated than overseas. There were more political factors involved, especially when it came to overseas films. The process was even more complicated and there were many scenes that had to be cut. After many overseas films were introduced, the audience was confused. They felt that the plot was broken and the connection was not coherent. Then they started to scold the director, saying that he was a famous Hollywood director. How could he make a film if he couldn't even tell a story? In fact, the director was the scapegoat for everything. They really did nothing wrong. Most of the time, it was because many important scenes in European and American films often contained ambiguous scenes between the male and female protagonists. Or perhaps they were politically skewed, so when they were cut, the key scenes were missing. Of course, the audience would have a headache watching it. Women did not have to worry about this at all in China. First, it was because Beard Deng had long been familiar with the system and process of domestic film censorship and approval. He himself made commercial films that were suitable for both young and old people, and his personal connections inside and outside the circle were completely enough. Second, it was because the three major investors were Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage's companies, Qin Guang's Tianguang Agency, and Qianda Pictures, the leading domestic cinema chain. Now that Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage's company shares were merged into Tianguang Group, Qin Guang had a honeymoon relationship with the elders. They were all on the same side, so there wouldn't be any problems. As for Qin Guang, it wasn't difficult to get the film to be screened in Europe and America. There weren't so many political considerations in Europe and America. It was more about the operation of the capital circle. As long as you had money, you could buy a small or medium-sized cinema chain to show it yourself. You had to get approval from the European and American Film Association. You could even wave a check to open the way. As long as the film didn't involve a clear political stance, the green light was guaranteed. Qin Guang called Tang Xiaokai. The two of them had a good chat and quickly reached a consensus. Tang Xiaokai took the initiative to pat his chest and say that he was going to find someone. Tang Jie Fund had a lot of shares in several large foreign film companies and maintained long-term cooperation with many people in power in the Film Association. Although Qin Guang's matter came suddenly, it wasn't difficult to just pass the censorship and get the rights to be screened in a few commercial cinema chains. Brother Xiaokai, who had not been in contact for a long time, had recently withdrawn his focus from Tianguang Group. He only played the role of a small shareholder in the company, and the proportion of shares he held had been decreasing. However, the main profit point of the Tang Jie Fund was not in Tianguang Group. In the beginning, he invested in the establishment of Tianguang Brokerage because he was entrusted by the elders in Beijing. He was purely rushing to give money away, and he did not expect to recover his capital. Now the $20 million invested had not gone to waste. Even though the proportion of shares had dropped to less than 20%, the actual value had already exceeded 500 million. Even in the investment market, it was a miracle. It was a typical case of low investment and high return. After hanging up the phone with Tang Xiaokai, Qin Guang was much more relaxed after he instantly implemented the matter. Qin Guang didn't need to contact Bonner Pierce. Tang Jie Fund's influence in Europe and America was wider than he had imagined. Tang Xiaokai would be enough. Therefore, some things were like this. If he didn't do it, it would feel impossible. However, once he was forced into a desperate situation, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and do it. Qin Guang realized that these seemingly impossible things could actually be made possible. As long as he could reach the Oscar selection criteria and sneak into the list, he could try to do whatever he wanted in the future. It seemed absurd and impossible, but what if he succeeded? It was just like everything he had done in the past. In the eyes of others, they were absurd and unrealistic, but didn't they all become true in the end? At most, he would just settle the contact details and identities of the judges and go straight to them. If his PY transaction skill was on cooldown, he would forcefully do it. If the skill was not on cooldown, he would either threaten and bribe the other party or force the other party to watch the movie. At the same time, he would reason with the other party. For example, "Friend, touch your heart and tell me, what do you think of my performance? Isn't it amazing? Isn't it cool? Isn't it powerful?" Taking 10,000 steps back, Liuli had tricked him so badly. At such a critical moment of life and death, shouldn't you take the initiative to make it up to me and help me give the other party a super powerful hypnosis? Since the Oscar was a mechanism that the judges were in charge of, there were loopholes that he could exploit. In the past, others did not take advantage of this loophole because they did not have PY transactions. They did not have world-class acting skills that could convince everyone, much less Liuli's godly hypnosis. Qin Guang had 10,000 reasons to believe that he could do it, so he did not feel guilty. For the sake of world-class acting skills, I paid such a huge price, went through so many life and death situations, suffered so much torture and pain, and finally mastered this unparalleled ability. In the past, I did not care about this bit of fame. I felt that good wine needed no bush, and that the honor and statue that should be mine would be mine sooner or later. But now I don't have time to wait. I want to live. So, to my competitors at the Oscars this year, I'm sorry. I deserve to be at the Oscars. Although my plan is a little shameful and shameless, that's because I have a clear conscience. No matter how difficult it was to quantify acting skills, it did not matter. As long as I won the award in the most authoritative voting and gave people a preconceived impression of me, it would be fine even if there was a flood of controversy outside. Just like in the past, there would definitely be some people who approved of me, and there would also be others who doubted me. Those who approved of me would gradually convince those who doubted me, and those who doubted me would think of ways to nitpick in the movie. They would try their best to find a bone in an egg, but it would be useless. Qin Guang was 100% sure that when the time came, those who wanted to nitpick would not be able to find any thorns. Instead, they would become his new fans because they studied him. Because my acting skills have always been perfect. The deeper they studied, the deeper they would sink. If I did not win the Oscars, others would not know that there was an actor named Qin Guang who had surpassed the times. But as long as I won the Oscars first, it did not matter how big the controversy was. As long as I accumulated time, the controversy would slowly become recognition, and I would have more and more fans. Coupled with the creation of public opinion, I could easily get rid of the situation where a pearl was covered in dust, and become the well-deserved #1 actor in the world in one fell swoop. The statue of a god in the acting world would come into being. Acting was the same as literature. As long as it reached a sufficiently high level, people would first think that someone was very good, or that someone's writing was rich in content. When the later generations analyzed and interpreted it, they would even take the initiative to reveal more profound meaning beyond the author's original intentions. The more they looked at it, the more profound it became, and the more they looked at it. For example, the domestic readology world had such a phenomenon. Zhou Xian might have casually said something in the original work, but the readologists of the later generations would be able to come up with dozens or even hundreds of different explanations. For example, the egg in Shui Baochai's hand is very round. If Zhou Xian had simply said it, the readologists would have an explanation. The egg indicated that Shui Baochai was slick and had a thick body. So what if she could give birth? It indicated that Shui Baochai was slick in handling matters in the Jia residence. She had arranged everything properly and orderly. A simple description of a round egg could lead to the Jia residence's precarious situation in the imperial court. Then it could lead to the relationship between Shui Baochai and Jia Baoyu under the bed. It was so rich in content that it made one's hair stand on end. If Zhou Xian could jump out from his coffin, he might slam the chopping board and make a fuss. Back then, I only wrote that sentence. It was just a small number of words. What kind of deep meaning was there? Are you all so capable? Why don't you go to heaven? But the ancients were long gone. No one knew what Grandmaster Zhou was really thinking. Acting was the same. When actors were facing the same camera, they might frown or they might glare. To express the same emotion, there were countless ways to choose. For example, anger. Some people would yell and scream to vent their anger, while others would stare coldly and silently. As for how to deal with it, everyone had their own opinions. At that time, Qin Guang's true micro-expressions could be seen in front of the camera. Even if it was just a simple raise of an eyebrow, a tiny wrinkle on his forehead, or the curve of his mouth that required a magnifying glass to be seen, it could even be interpreted with countless rich meanings. Because his performance could withstand scrutiny, he always substituted himself into the real world of the character in front of the camera. He completely lived as a different person. After settling these matters, Qin Guang fell into a long contemplation. He thought about the matter of the strongest perfect body. This was really hard to achieve. As he was in a daze, his phone rang. He picked it up and his eyes lit up. It was Teacher Zhou. Teacher Zhou had finally gotten off the plane. As soon as the call was connected, Zhou Jingxi's sweet voice came from the other side. Qin Guang, are you in Tangshan? Yes, I'm here. What about you, Teacher Zhou? Are you in Wujing Airport? I'll pick you up right away. No, I've already arrived at Tangshan Industrial Factory. I'm in Hualing's laboratory. If you have time, come over now. But if you have other things to do, don't worry. I'm not in a hurry. Come over right away. Qin Guang thought to himself, how long has it been since we last met? How could Teacher Zhou not be in a hurry? We're not an ordinary man and woman, are we? He looked at the time. It was already past 7 o'clock in the evening. Zhou Jingxi must have rushed directly to Tangshan after getting off the plane at Wujing Airport. Perhaps she didn't tell him before because she wanted to give him a surprise? Hualing, quickly adjust the temperature of the water bath pot. It must be controlled at around 54.3 degrees Celsius. The more accurate, the better. Zhongyu, help me check the relevant information on 16-membered macrolide antibiotics. The pharmaceutical factory in Tangshan Industrial Park should be producing this type of medicine. I need to determine the specific catalytic reaction equation. Hualing, after setting the temperature of the water bath pot, configure it with a concentration of 379% sodium chloride solution. First, put the catalyst carrier in for 55 minutes. Very good, Zhongyu. Now check the paper published by Prince's Laboratory on SCI on the 17th of last month. There is a summary of the experimental process and related parameters of using this photocatalyst to catalyze ester compounds. We have to completely replicate the experimental process to determine whether it will be useful in the end. While Qin Guang was still on the road, Zhou Jingxi, who had just gotten off the plane, had already changed into a white coat and entered work mode. Although Hualing and Zhong Yu hadn't seen Zhou Jingxi for a long time and were even assigned to someone else's project team, once Zhou Jingxi came back, they didn't even need to adapt. It was as if the three of them had returned to the state of the experimental team with tacit understanding and high efficiency. At this time, although Zhou Jingxi had a tired face, it couldn't hide the glow in her eyes. She used to think that she was of no use to Qin Guang, so even though Wang Ren and Su Lijing had been executed, she could have returned to Gokyo University. However, she still chose to stay in the laboratory abroad and never came back. Firstly, it was a rare trip for her and she had spent a lot of money on it. So if she returned empty-handed, she wouldn't be able to learn anything and would disappoint Professor Xu Lirong. At the same time, it would also be a waste of the 500,000 yen that Qin Guang sponsored for her. On the other hand, she might be out of the country, but she did not sever her contact with the country. Although she didn't have a complete grasp of Qin Guang's movements, she still knew a thing or two. Indeed, Qin Guang wasn't born to be an ordinary person, and he was destined to soar into the sky. An ordinary outstanding man might have one or two above-average women around him, but when a man was as good as Qin Guang, he would inevitably become the focus of women. Although he did confess his love to her in public, Zhou Jingxi secretly compared herself with the female protagonists who had scandals with him, especially Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage, the vice president of his company, Tang Ying, the person in charge of his subsidiary company, Chu Zijin, the senior beauty Wenwen who had an ambiguous relationship with him at school, and even Sun Xiaoxuan, who was also infatuated with him in her class. Zhou Jingxi, who came from an ordinary family, subconsciously felt a little ashamed of her inferiority. Although she was a little confident in her appearance, Zhou Jingxi felt that whether it was personality, workability, family background, or even the help she could form for Qin Guang, she simply didn't have a sense of existence. She was even the opposite of others, completely a burden to him. Although he didn't care about money no matter what, she had already taken an 800,000 yuan car from him, plus 500,000 yuan in cash. There was a total of 1,300,000 yuan here. He said it casually, treating it as a maintenance fee, but Zhou Jingxi felt that Qin Guang wasn't a person who would support others, and she was even less willing to be supported by others. Moreover, if it was just to support him, she had only slept with him once, and yet she took away 1,300,000 yuan. He was a little too expensive. Therefore, in the past 6 months, Zhou Jingxi could have come back, but she deliberately didn't. She deliberately hid and stayed away from the center of trouble. She also wanted herself to be calmer and re-examine her relationship with Qin Guang. At the same time, she also hoped that he would be calmer, hoping that he would understand that he should have a better woman to be worthy of him. But this time the situation was different. Qin Guang was in trouble, and it was trouble that he couldn't solve. He had been having a headache about it for a long time. Most importantly, she seemed to be able to help him. His troubles were in direct conflict with his profession. Zhou Jingxi thought that she had calmed down after 6 months, but the moment she heard the news, her heart was reignited. She thought that she could calm down, but it turned out to be useless. She couldn't control the deepest and truest thoughts in her heart. Not only did distance and time not dilute the taboo attachment she had for this former student, but it also made the old wine stronger. Therefore, she threw away the position of laboratory director that she had worked hard in America for half a year and came back without hesitation. She even took something from the laboratory that she shouldn't have, and carried a great risk of responsibility. Her thinking was very simple. Since Qin Guang was really involved in the environmental protection industry, and she had the ability to help him in this field, to be his helper, then I will come back, I will help him. As for her studies in America, she could give up on her career in America. It didn't matter if she had to bear the risk of stealing the samples from Prince's laboratory and leaking the results of the laboratory in China. As long as she could help him in this matter, it didn't matter even if she got sued and was called a thief in the academic world. I have to prove one thing: I am useful to him. I am not a woman who can only obtain from him without knowing how to return the favor. To him, Tongshan factory might seem important, but it wasn't indispensable. However, even if she could only help him a little in the field of environmental protection, as long as she could help him keep this foundation, it would prove the meaning of her existence. It was with this kind of mentality that Zhou Xian returned to China at lightning speed. After getting off the plane, she didn't think of resting at all and went straight to the laboratory to work. He planned to go all out to help Chen Guang. Of course, she also has her own selfish motives. Compared with girls like Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage who attract worldwide attention, she is too inconspicuous. But as long as Chen Guang was dragged into the field of environmental protection, then Zhou Xian, as the recognized disciple of Professor Xu Lirong of Gokyo University, and a new young scholar in the field of photocatalysis, would have enough power and status to stand shoulder to shoulder with celebrities. I want to seize this opportunity to grab the throat of my fate. This is the link between me and Chen Guang. I will personally guard this link. Teacher Zhou, you brought the sample back like this. Will there be any problems overseas? Hua Ling asked tentatively as she was busy. Zhou Xian waved her hand indifferently. It doesn't matter, this is my research results. Although it belongs to Prince's laboratory, I only use it within the scope of Tangshan Industrial Factory, and it won't be easily leaked. Even if they find out, they can take their time in China to file a lawsuit. Anyway, Chen Guang's Tangshan Industrial Factory may have a chance to be saved. Zhou said, but Teacher Zhou, the new photocatalyst you brought back only has special effects on ester organic compounds. If you look at the entire Tangshan Industrial Factory, there are a total of 5 kinds of ultra-difficult wastewater. Ester antibiotics are only one of them. Zhou Xian smiled. You don't understand. The current situation of Tangshan Industrial Factory looks bad, but in the final analysis, it's just that the microbes can't be cultivated, and the biochemical treatment efficiency is very low. We will start with antibiotics and improve the most difficult growth environment for microbes. It is possible for microbes to reproduce in large quantities. At that time, it may still be difficult to meet the standard, but at least we can save more than half of the dosage. Sewage treatment is a very systematic thing, and the biggest difficulty is often a breakthrough at a certain point. We first overcome the biggest difficulty, and then we can hit the surface and solve the urgent problem of Tangshan Industrial Factory. Hua Ling and Zhou looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. Teacher Zhou was indeed Teacher Zhou. In this aspect of thinking, the two of them were indeed ashamed of their inferiority. In addition, as long as the photocatalyst I brought back is effective, even if Chen Guang rebuilt Tangshan Industrial Factory, he can save at least 100 million yuan in costs. Right, cheer up. Let's first prepare for the experiment. From tomorrow onwards, the whole army will be mobilized. When Chen Guang arrived at the laboratory, he saw Zhou Xian cheering Hua Ling and Zhou with big dark circles under her eyes. He stood quietly at the door with the glow of the crescent moon behind him. Looking at the familiar yet slightly unfamiliar woman in the white coat, he was dumbfounded. Long time no see. I have lost weight. Chen Guang swallowed his saliva. His throat was a little dry. She really had lost weight. Even with the white coat covering her, it was clear that she seemed to be a size smaller than before. Her original figure was a very standard S shape, plump and tall. She was the typical representative of a slightly plump beauty. But now, the white coat of Zhou, who was about the same height as her but not fat, looked like a child's robe on her. The traces of bones on her wrists were clearly visible, and her fingers were even more slender because of the lack of flesh. On her originally charming face, her cheekbones were even slightly raised. Although she was still beautiful, there was a bit of coldness on top of her charming beauty. She had a hard time in America for the past 6 months. Indescribable self-blame rose in Chen Guang's heart. I should have pulled her back more forcefully earlier. Zhou Xian's hand that was holding the test tube suddenly froze. She turned her head sideways and looked at Chen Guang in the direction of the door. Her eyes were slightly moist and her nose was slightly sour. She had thought that when she saw him again she would be able to maintain her calm and smile. She would say to him with a smile, "You disobedient bad student, did you miss me?" But the reality was that Zhou Xian's mouth was only slightly open, and she could not say a word. Compared to the past, Chen Guang's face had lost some of his childishness and looked more mature. His gaze seemed to have become deeper because of more experiences. After being in a position of power for a long time, his brows seemed to have gained some of the aura of a leader. He was no longer the poor student from a poor family. He had become more mature and more responsible. He was no longer carefree. The various troubles in life had buried a hint of melancholy between his brows. He seemed to have grown a little taller. His skin was a little darker. However, what had not changed was his pair of clear eyes that could see through people's hearts. Zhou Jingxi's breathing became more and more rapid. She did not know how much she would miss him until they met. Chapter 1044. Hua Ling, who was at the side, reached out and quietly took the test tube from Zhou Jingxi's hand. Finally freed, Zhou Jingxi pounced forward. She couldn't care less about the two outsiders anymore. Like a tired bird returning to its nest, she plunged into Qin Guang's embrace and hugged him tightly. Qin Guang hugged her back. Zhou Jingxi wanted to kiss him hard, but she did not do so in the end. After hugging him quietly for a while, she let go of Qin Guang and patted his shoulder. She forced herself to calm down and said, "I've lost weight, but you've gained weight." "Of course not. I'm strong, not fat." Qin Guang grinned. Zhou Jingxi rolled her eyes at him. "You still have a glib tongue. But you've really lost a lot of weight. You must have had a hard time in America. Are you skimping on your food and clothes?" "I didn't skimp on my food and clothes. It's just that time waits for no one when it comes to scientific research. If I'm a step slower, I'll be a step behind others. If I'm a step ahead, I'll always fall behind. Since I've gone and stayed in Prince's lab, I can't stop. Otherwise, if I give others a lead and the results come out first, all my hard work will go to waste. Besides, it's better to be thin. Isn't it fashionable to be thin for beauty now? That's not true. You're as fleshy as before. It's better." Zhou Jingxi looked like she was about to cry. "Are you saying that I'm not good-looking now?" Qin Guang waved his hands. "No, absolutely not. Both are good-looking but different kinds of beauty. It's just that I think you're healthier the way you were before. Anyway, since you're back, don't leave again. Although you're studying abroad, you're still working for someone else. It's quite boring. By the way, you suddenly came back this time. Doesn't that mean all your previous work went to waste?" Zhou Jingxi immediately perked up at the mention of her profession. She proudly pulled Qin Guang to the lab table and pointed to a dark brown glass bottle on the table. She said, "Actually, I only came back this time because I gave up my position as a lab director. But just a month ago, the project I was in charge of for the past 6 months produced results. This is it. The latest catalyst that has a miraculous effect on ester compounds. It can solve the problem of antibiotics in your pharmaceutical factory." Qin Guang carefully picked up the bottle and looked at the silvery liquid flowing slowly inside. Although the bottle was not big, it was very heavy in his hand. This thing was very dense. Judging from Zhou Jingxi's tone, this was probably all of her hard work over the past 6 months. No wonder she returned in such a hurry. It turned out that she just happened to have a new photocatalyst that might be suitable for her. She wanted to help me. Qin Guang completely understood Zhou Jingxi's feelings and couldn't help but feel emotional and grateful. She said it lightly, but she really gave up a lot of things, and it was also very heavy. Prince's laboratory was world famous. It was full of talented people and had a very high status internationally. Every position in the laboratory was extremely valuable. Even doctoral students who graduated from famous universities in the Ivy League would try their best to get in. Even if they could only get the opportunity to be an assistant at the bottom of the laboratory, people would cherish it very much, let alone a director-level researcher who was in charge of a laboratory. As long as she worked in Prince's laboratory until she was 40, by then, whether she continued to stay there or left, even if she was still a lab director, she would definitely be fought over by major scientific research institutions around the world. Even if she went to work in an enterprise, she would definitely be the most core kind of technical backbone. What she gave up was the opportunity to rise rapidly on the road of academia. What she gave up was a smooth road to life. Just because he encountered some difficulties in the country, she made such a resolute decision. With a woman like this, what more could he ask for? Qin Guang took a deep breath. "I don't know how to say this. Anyway, thank you." "Why are you thanking me? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to go to the United States. Now that you're in trouble and I can help you, how can I turn a blind eye? By the way, do you understand photocatalysis now? Let me explain it to you." Qin Guang grinned. "I know a thing or two." "Are you kidding me?" Although the old man's knowledge was crammed into him by the Holy Grail in terms of theoretical knowledge, the person standing in front of you is the most authentic master in human history, okay? "That's good, listen to me," Qin Guang interrupted Zhou Jingxi and said, "Wait a minute, I have a question. As far as I know, foreign laboratories like this, including Prince's laboratory or the leading research institutes in the communications industry, such as Bell Laboratories or Qualcomm Laboratories, all have very strict confidentiality agreements. Teacher Zhou, you entered Prince as a commissioned training staff from Gokyo University. Although you're now a C-level researcher, strictly speaking, you're completely employed by Prince. Your experimental costs all came from Prince, so you should also receive a salary there. So your results should all belong to Prince's laboratory. After all, your status in academia is far from the level where you can be on an equal footing with the laboratory itself. Chongjiang scholars like Professor Xu and even our domestic academicians don't seem to be qualified to discuss terms and conditions with Prince to share the results. At the very least, you have to be a Nobel Prize-level scholar, a world-renowned scholar, to be qualified to share the results with Prince. Didn't they say anything when you brought back the sample and synthesis technology that you just researched? Zhou Jingxi's face was slightly stiff, but she quickly waved her hand and said, "It's fine, our country is far away, they can't do anything about it." Teacher Zhou, you snuck out, right? Zhou Jingxi blushed. That's right, I pretended to take a leave of absence, saying that there was an urgent matter at home. I didn't really resign, but I don't plan on going back. Qin Guang said anxiously, but the saying that the emperor is far away is just a saying in the past. Now the world is so big you can reach it in one flight. There's no place that's far away from the emperor. A mature photocatalyst formula represented a potential market of several billion US. Prince would not give up easily. If the other party is just a small company with no influence, it doesn't matter. But as far as I know, although Prince's laboratory is not well known in the ears of ordinary people, it has cooperation with many consortia around the world, and it is also very influential in our country. You can run, but you can't run away. Something will happen. Zhou Jingxi's face briefly showed a worried look, but she immediately said carelessly, "It's fine, just wait for them to sue. This is just my personal behavior, and it is only used within the scope of Tongshan Industrial Plant. As long as I don't leak the formula to others, they will turn a blind eye. At worst, I will sign a compensation contract for them." Qin Guang shook his head. "Money is a small matter, I can handle it. But if this is the case, how can you establish yourself in academia in the future? This is what I am worried about." Zhou Jingxi didn't care. "If I can't establish myself, then I won't. I also understand. In the future, when I return to Gokyo University, no matter how powerful Prince is, he can't control me as a non-staff member to be in charge of projects at Gokyo University, right? At worst, my results in the future will be under your name. You know me, I don't particularly care about these false names. Now that I have you, I don't lack money. I just want to do more things. You know what my ideal is. Being a big boss behind the scenes is much more meaningful than jumping out to attract attention." Qin Guang rolled his eyes. "You must have watched too many melodramatic TV dramas. Didn't you see that those behind the scenes died miserably in the end? No, I can't let this happen to you. If it's yours, it must be yours. You can't let others take your name for what you did. That would be too unfair to you. But now that I am back, they have probably started the legal process. Every gram of the sample is recorded. They must have found out that I took so much." Zhou Jingxi couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Qin Guang rolled his eyes, but he already had an idea. He wasn't in a hurry. Since Zhou Jingxi had given up so much for him, then he would personally send her to the altar. Prince's photocatalyst formula? Was it very powerful? "I'm sorry, but I have an ancestor here. You say we stole your results? You want to sue us? You want to sue us? I'm sorry, but the truth is that your things aren't even worthy of carrying my shoes. I have 5 god-level formulas in my hands. They can be used at room temperature, can be exposed to sunlight, have super low wastage rate, super low synthesis cost, and have super stable adhesion properties. All I have to do is brush them on a shelf and throw them into water and they'll be effective." Anyone would scream in pain. "Father, how can you be so awesome? When that time comes, you will realize that your formulas aren't even 1% of my standards. What right do you have to say that we stole your things? What a joke." Qin Guang had been worried about how he could use a more reasonable and less shocking method to take out the 5 photocatalyst formulas that transcended time. Now Zhou Jingxi was right there in front of him. With the formula in hand, he could subtly influence her thoughts into his ready-made formula. It was just like solving a problem. The teacher would first know the results and the process of solving the problem. Then he would turn it around and teach the students the problem. This way the students would have a much easier time. Teacher Zhou used to be my tutor. Now it's my turn to teach you, my little Cici. Don't worry, let me take a look at your formula. Although Qin Guang was confident, he still planned to take a look first. Zhou Jingxi did not understand what he was up to. She only handed him the booklet that she had brought with her. The booklet contained the specific physical and chemical properties, catalytic properties, and the specific synthesis method of the formula that she had brought back this time. You can really understand it? Don't you need me to tell you? There are a lot of technical terms in it. Zhou Jingxi saw him pick it up and read it. She still didn't believe him. She stared at him with her beautiful eyes. Qin Guang just smiled mysteriously. You'll know later. Chapter 1045. He still did not believe it. Zhou Jingxi did not understand why Qin Guang knew about photocatalysis. Although he had briefly stayed in the laboratory at Gokyo University for a few days, he did not have time to do anything serious before Wang Ren and Su Lijing's incident happened. He did not have time to learn about photocatalysis at all. Later on, she saw that he was busy every day as if he was fighting a war. With his personality, he would not spend time learning something that was meaningless to him. Furthermore, his experiment manual had not been systematically organized and simplified. It was all first-hand information that he had written while working in Prince's laboratory. Although it was detailed, it was not systematic and very messy. Furthermore, there were many professional terms that ordinary people would not be able to understand. Putting aside the fact that Qin Guang couldn't understand the long series of reaction equations and calculations in the manual, just those professional terms that ordinary people wouldn't even come into contact with once in their lifetime would probably make him feel like he was reading a book from heaven, right? However, seeing how confident Qin Guang was, Zhou Jingxi did not want to attack him in front of Hua Ling and Zhong Yu. The relationship between the two was not ordinary. With Zhou Jingxi's meticulousness, she would take care of his reputation as a man when they were outside. Since he felt that he could read it, she would wait for him to read it for a while and explain it to him later. With this in mind, Zhou Jingxi turned back to the experiment with Hua Ling and Zhong Yu. From time to time she would look at Qin Guang, who was sitting there engrossed in his notes. Sometimes he frowned, sometimes he smiled, and sometimes he showed a knowing smile. It was a very approving look. He flipped through the book very quickly, almost turning a page in less than a minute. It could be said that he read 10 lines at a glance. Zhou Jingxi thought to herself, I haven't seen him for half a year and this guy's skin has become thicker. He's really good at pretending. I heard that he acted in a movie that hasn't been released yet. I used to think that he was acting for fun, but now it seems that he might really be a good actor. But as an actor, you're a little unprofessional. There are so many words on each page of my notes. Even if you're reading a novel, you can't read it so fast, right? What's more, you're reading my professional notes, which are at least 100 times more profound than a novel. With the speed at which you're flipping through the pages, are you going to use it as a fan? Teacher Zhou Qin Guang is really good at acting. If I didn't know him, I might have really believed him. Hua Ling moved closer to Zhou Jingxi and teased her in a low voice. Zhong Yu, on the other hand, had a different opinion. That's not necessarily true. When he first arrived at Tangshan factory a few days ago, didn't he also give us a fright? He does know a lot of water treatment techniques. At the very least, when he walked around the factory, the problems he picked out were no worse than when Teacher Xu first came. In fact, he might even be more detailed. Hua Ling came back to her senses and suddenly said, that seems to be the case. If he hasn't read the reports related to Tangshan factory before and can find all the problems by himself, then he seems to be really capable? Hua Ling was a little unsure. She felt that it wasn't right for her to always look at Qin Guang the way she used to, but she also felt that it was too unbelievable. Zhou Jingxi interrupted the two of them. Let's not care about him for now. There are still 3 steps left. Let's hurry up. Soak the sample in the sodium chloride solution later. You must pay attention to the time. 9.5 hours, not a second more. Later, lock the lab door and everyone go rest. After another half an hour, Qin Guang finally put down his notebook. He wasn't in a hurry to speak. Instead, he closed his eyes and thought about what he should say to Zhou Jingxi. On the other side, Zhou Jingxi and the other two were still busy preparing for the experiment. They didn't know that he had put down his book. Zhou Jingxi had been on the plane for more than 10 hours. After getting off, she hadn't adjusted her biological clock. Although she could sleep on the plane, she couldn't sleep well. She was really a little sleepy. Her originally energetic eyes had become a little cloudy. She shook her head slightly from time to time, trying her best to stay awake. Seeing that she was still gritting her teeth and holding on, Qin Guang felt a little uncomfortable. On one hand, he felt sorry for Zhou Xian's hard work. He thought that she had been in a similar state of work in the United States for the past 6 months. On the other hand, he felt sorry that her passion might be in vain. The formula she brought back was indeed the world's leading formula. It could greatly accelerate the hydrolysis process of ester macromolecular compounds. However, the antibiotics of Tangshan Industrial Factory were not ordinary esters. They were 16-membered macrolides. Because of its special molecular structure, the molecule contained a lactone structure and a 16-membered ring. The bond energy between atoms was relatively high, and the molecular structure was relatively stable. This caused the catalytic effect of the photocatalyst carrier brought back by Zhou Xian to be greatly reduced. It was impossible for it to be industrialized. If he wanted it to be effective, ordinary sunlight was far from enough. He needed a large dose of X-ray radiation. However, he must also take into account the absorption rate of X-ray radiation in water. At the same time, this X-ray radiation was far beyond the human body's tolerance limit. The cost of the X-ray machine equipment of ultra-high light was one aspect. The operating cost of the ultra-high energy consumption was another. As an open production environment of the sewage treatment plant, it was impossible to take care of the safety of the operator. Even if they were wearing anti-radiation clothing, such a long period of X-ray exposure could cause great harm to nearby businesses and people. Just like every time ordinary people went to the hospital to take photos, the doctor would often ask the patient how long it was since the last photo was taken before writing the list. The number of X-rays that ordinary people could take in a year was limited. There was even a hard rule that there must be a number of days between consecutive X-rays. After all, industrial applications were not like laboratory conditions. The water volume was much larger, and the operating conditions could not be as closed as in the laboratory. At present, Zhou Xian did not know about this situation. She was still full of confidence and wanted to verify the effect. However, based on the super-rich and comprehensive basic knowledge that he had mastered, Qin Guang could come to this conclusion just by inferring in his mind. He even calculated the exact dose of X-ray. Based on this calculation, if he wanted to use the photocatalyst brought back by Zhou Xian, he would have to build a new closed operation workshop for antibiotic wastewater. The construction cost was hundreds of millions, and the daily operating cost was more than $1 million. The total investment and cost was even higher than adding drugs. What's more, he could only solve one antibiotic wastewater. There were 4 other super difficult wastewater. It was meaningless. But how should he tell her? If he told Zhou Xian the truth directly, would it be too much of a blow to her? After all, she also wanted to help him out of passion. While Qin Guang was distracted, Zhou Xian's body staggered slightly. He did not know if she tripped or if she was too tired. Seeing this, Qin Guang quickly rushed out and hugged Zhou Xian from behind. He decided, forget it. Let's not say anything and just directly pull her away from the laboratory. It would save him the trouble of thinking of ways to make her give up on this photocatalyst and not do such useless work. Alright, don't do it today. You just got off the plane and haven't adjusted your biological clock yet. Why are you risking your life in the laboratory? I'm not in such a hurry. Rest first. After saying that, Qin Guang did not wait for Zhou Xian's consent. He carried her by the waist and left. Hey, Qin Guang. Put me down. Who wants to put you down? I told you to go rest. Senior Hualing, Senior Zhongyu, go rest early too. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Zhou Xian struggled a little, but she was no match for Qin Guang. He hugged her tightly and carried her out of the laboratory before she could say anything. Wait a minute. Zhou Xian hurriedly struggled to poke her head out. Hualing, Zhongyu, don't listen to him. There's only one last step left. You must do it well. Don't oversleep tomorrow morning. Remember to go to the laboratory and take out the sample in time. When you leave later, remember to lock the door and put the bottle with the sample in the safe. As they spoke, the two of them walked further and further away, quickly disappearing without a trace. Only the 2 senior sisters were left in a daze. Hualing and Zhongyu looked at each other and shrugged helplessly. Hualing pouted. I told you these 2 are very ambiguous. Look at how teacher Zhou pretended to struggle just now. In fact, she almost wanted to jump into his arms. Zhongyu patted her shoulder. Don't gossip about them behind their backs. It's their own business anyway. Anyway, as long as Teacher Zhou is happy, it's fine. Happy, of course he's happy. How can he not be happy? Okay, let's continue working. On the other side, Qin Guang carried Zhou Jingxi to the parking lot and put her in the front passenger seat. He sat down and said as he lit the fire, Teacher Zhou, actually, the photo catalyst you brought back might not be useful. Zhou Jingxi's face was full of confusion. She didn't think that Qin Guang understood her notes at all, and she couldn't understand why he said it was useless. Don't joke around. I've tested it many times in prints. It's more or less useful. You didn't understand my notes at all, did you? You're talking nonsense, right? Qin Guang shrugged helplessly. Forget it. You won't believe me even if I tell you. Anyway, have a good rest tonight. When the results come out tomorrow, you'll probably believe me. Chapter 1046. Can I have a good rest tonight? Sitting in the front passenger seat, Zhou Jingxi was silent. She turned her head to look out the window and watched the trees on both sides of the road fly past. Inexplicably, because of Qin Guang's words, a myriad of thoughts ran through her mind. She was a little shy but also a little expectant, but she was indeed a little tired. She wanted to have a good rest, but she had other considerations. Although they hadn't seen each other for a long time since she was back and everyone had already broken through that layer of window paper, it would happen sooner or later. Everyone was an adult and they all had needs in that area. A long drought met a good rain, so there was nothing shameful or difficult to talk about. It was just that if the two of them were in love for a long time, there was no need to rush day and night. Reason told Zhou Jingxi that the best choice tonight was definitely to have a good rest and adjust her biological clock, so that she could bring out the true perfect working state during the day tomorrow to help Qin Guang solve his problems. I understand all the logic, but I can't control myself. Emotionally, she really couldn't control herself. Just smelling the manly scent coming from his body, her mind was a little fuzzy, and the things that happened with him in her rented house were still vivid in her mind, repeatedly replaying. Then her heart began to beat faster and her breathing became rapid. The devil deep in her lower abdomen was playing tricks, causing her to clamp her legs tightly, and a certain place was already faintly moist. What should I do later? Should we do something about it? If he takes the initiative to ask, I definitely can't resist and agree immediately. But if he feels that I'm too tired and a taciturn gourd, should I take the initiative to attack? But will he think that I've become too loose? Will I leave a bad impression in his heart? Also, if I really do something and can't sleep well tonight, it will definitely affect my working state tomorrow, right? Zhou Jingxi really felt very conflicted, very tired, and completely unable to make up her mind. Qin Guang thought that she was asleep, so he didn't say anything else. As he drove, he couldn't help but think of other things. The huge debt of 1.46 billion inevitably made him feel an indescribable sense of urgency. He must immediately get 2 statues of One-Line Sky Realm to pay off the debt in time after 2 years. However, divine statues were not cabbages that could be found immediately. Therefore, there would definitely be a time lag in between. At that time, there would definitely be a gap of faith. If he wanted to survive, he had to think of a way to earn some extra income from other ideas. For example, in the next month he could obtain a more reliable Heaven's Line Cup Intermediate Realm and build another god statue in time. Another example was to develop more zealots and use the additional faith provided by zealots to make up for the difference. Or perhaps he could open up a high-level world within a cup that was similar to the realm of the Transient Sea or the realm of True Martial, and obtain some additional faith value from it. However, there were too many variables in these matters and he could only rely on the heavens to make a living. There was a great deal of randomness and it was not under his control. What was even crazier was that ever since he owed the debt, the Holy Grail had started to collect the debt on its own. Every day, at every moment, as soon as the faith points entered his account, he would immediately confiscate them and use them to make up for the debt. Now the Holy Grail had become a transparent funnel. No matter how much faith points were poured in from the top, they would be instantly swallowed up by the bottom, ensuring that there would not be a single penny left in his pocket. If it was not for this super awkward situation, Qin Guang could totally rely on the custom-made world within a cup to take a shortcut, and casually use a custom-made world within a cup that was especially easy to achieve. For example, he could first learn the third-order Rubik's Cube blind twisting in the Special Training Cup Intermediate Realm, and then directly scam some of the more popular variety shows such as The Most Powerful Melon Seeds, Challenge the Impossible, Wuxia's Got Talent, or the original Central TV Guinness, And now the new show Wuxia's 5,000 years of ultimate skills. At that time, with the astonishing hand speed of his Qilin arm and the special training ability of the world within a cup, he could directly compress the world record from nearly 20 seconds to less than 1 second. Coupled with the live broadcast of variety shows, he could achieve the effect of exploding people's eyes on the spot. Then, with crazy publicity and hype regardless of the cost, he would be able to create a spirit god statue in less than a month. Although the current upper limit of the spirit god statue's production capacity was only about 50,000 or so, no matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat. Many a little makes a mickle, and he would eventually be able to make up for the shortfall. Unfortunately, his heart was higher than the sky and his life was thinner than paper. He was full of ideals, but reality was too cruel. He lost as much faith points as he collected. Right now, he couldn't even enjoy the 600,000 beggar version of the Spirit God Custom Cup Intermediate Realm. The damned Holy Grail was even more shameless than the bank. At the very least, the bank collected a mortgage payment once a month, but the Holy Grail paid at all times. Because of this, other than setting up 2 Spirit God statues as soon as possible, whether or not Qin Guang could survive depended on the heavens. It was purely a gamble with his life. A good face meant a good life, and a good life meant that he could live. But he couldn't just close his eyes and wait for death without putting in some effort, right? Forget it, he would do his best and leave it to the heavens. In short, he only had 730 days left. Every wasted day, the possibility of him successfully repaying the loan would be lower, and he would be one step closer to death. This was not a drill, nor was it a joke. Now that Teacher Zhou was back, he had also set up a strategy to rely on Teacher Zhou to more reasonably throw out the 5 god-level new photocatalyst formulas. But this matter must be done quickly. He didn't have much time to continue to waste time in Tangshan Industrial Factory. Although money was good and face was important, it was not as practical as faith points. Now that this situation had occurred, he couldn't care less about one thing and lose sight of the other. He had to distinguish between priorities. But Tangshan Industrial Factory's front line was still very long, and it couldn't be done overnight. Knowing the formula was one thing, putting the formula into practice and turning the data on paper into a real product was another. He had to find a way through Teacher Zhou to contact reliable large laboratories at home and abroad to solve the problem of industrial production and application. Tangshan Industrial Factory was so large that the demand for photocatalysts was not small. It was impossible to produce a single milligram. However, the synthetic materials of photocatalysts were not only expensive, but also extremely difficult to obtain. Even if you waived a check, you might not be able to buy it. The equipment needed for synthesis were extremely high-end, representing the world's most advanced scientific research level. Money couldn't be used. Just like the world's first ion collider in China, advanced equipment represented monopolized scientific research resources. Even if a high school student was found to use this collider, he could sort out a set of data based on the observation results, and casually write a paper that could be published in an SCI journal. It was more useful than a PhD student writing a paper for half a year. Although Qin Guang's formula was ready-made and his theoretical knowledge was hundreds of years ahead of the world, the synthesis method was under the unspoken rules of the heavenly Holy Grail. It just happened to be stuck at the limit of the level of modern science and technology. It was the energy efficiency limit of the world's most advanced photocatalyst synthesis equipment. Unfortunately, this set of equipment was not in China. It happened to be in the world's first photocatalyst laboratory, Prince Laboratory, which Zhou Jingxi had just defended. So far, Qin Guang did not know about this situation. He was still immersed in his own troubles. Otherwise, it would only be more painful for him. How should I tell her, explain to her, make her believe in my formula, and immediately throw away the weak project results in her hands and turn to the implementation of my 5 god-level formulas? She doesn't even trust my basic level now. If I directly throw her 5 formulas, she must think that I am crazy and will not take it seriously at all, right? This was really the blissful trouble of a genius. His knowledge and ability were too far beyond this era. His realm and level were too far beyond his age, so it was too difficult to win people's trust in what he said and the ability he showed, especially this kind of knowledge. If he was an old man in his 60s or 70s and became an old master in the eyes of others, let alone taking out 5 photocatalyst formulas, even if he proposed a new theory today and pushed the theoretical level of contemporary quantum mechanics forward by 20 years, Or if he came up with a new set of technology tomorrow and conquered the treatment of cancer or AIDS, others would not question too much. Even if there was controversy, at least others would not take it seriously. At most, they would question him and carry out scientific verification of his theory. As long as his knowledge and theory itself had no problems and could stand up to scrutiny and test, after others completed verification and practice, all doubts would slowly disappear. Science was not like politics where what was right and what was wrong was wrong. It was much simpler. What should I say now? I can't hurt her self-esteem. It's a headache. After leaving the Tongshan industrial factory, the two people with their own thoughts went straight to the hotel without saying a word. The atmosphere was not awkward. It was just that they had something on their minds. After arriving, Zhou Jingxi didn't let Chen Guang help her up. It's okay. I'm not that weak. I'm in good spirits. Zhou Jingxi smiled and waved her hand, forcing herself to look energetic. She really didn't want to admit that she was pretending to be energetic so that Chen Guang wouldn't take pity on her and force her to sleep the moment they reached the hotel. Although she was conflicted, she really wanted something to happen. Her legs were getting weaker and her face was slowly getting redder. After taking 2 steps, Zhou Jingxi staggered again and almost fell to the ground. Chen Guang supported her. How are you in good spirits? Forget it. I was going to talk to you tonight about why the photocatalyst you brought back didn't work. But it seems like there's no chance. When we get up, you should sleep first. We'll talk about everything tomorrow. Chen Guang sighed in his heart. Although he was really in a hurry and didn't want to waste a day, it seemed that there was no other way. He couldn't be too selfish. Teacher Zhou was too tired. She had to rest.